Marvel. God level eating. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151, Eliminating the Demonic Trace. A calm voice came out of Johnny's mouth slowly. The whole space was completely imprisoned. The witch-heart demon's body was less than 1 meter away from Johnny, but in this space as hard as steel, it could not move forward. In front of Mephisto, Johnny used the space confinement again. Not only the witch-heart demon, but also Mephisto was within the range of confinement. After a fierce struggle, the witch-heart demon found that his body was stagnant in midair and could not move at all. The huge power of the demon's body was meaningless in the face of this hard-spaced confinement. The gap in power level was too big. "Johnny, I didn't provoke you. Don't go too far." Mephisto's face changed drastically in the imprisoned space, and he shouted with his mental power. Johnny looked at Mephisto coldly, without any intention of paying any attention. "Let me go, despicable human, and return the contract to me, otherwise, I will make you live a life worse than death." Under the spatial confinement, Wu Zhenmo roared fiercely, and all his demonic power completely erupted, trying desperately to break free from the spatial confinement and take back the contract. "Just you?" Facing the violently struggling Wu Zhenmo, Johnny sneered, and his aura was no longer restrained, and his pressure and murderous aura instantly erupted. Under Johnny's fully erupted pressure, Wu Zhenmo only felt that he was in a sea of blood and corpses. Johnny in front of him was like a terrifying killing god, and countless powerful creatures were lying dead at Johnny's feet. In Wu Zhenmo's perception, any creature lying dead at Johnny's feet was far more powerful than him. At this moment, Wu Zhenmo's eyes were no longer ferocious and furious, but only endless fear, the fear of death. Wu Zhenmo had a sense of unreality. The pressure from the human in front of him alone made his body tremble unconsciously. Originally, Wu Zhenmo thought that although his strength in the Abyss Plane did not reach the level of the Abyss Lord, his own Mephisto's bloodline allowed his strength to grow rapidly. Apart from Mephisto, he had almost no rivals. Unexpectedly, just when his ambition was about to be achieved, he was hit by a terrible blow. It was this blow that sent him into a cold hell. Feeling the biting cold murderous intent coming from Johnny, Wu Zhenmo was about to beg for mercy, but it was too late. Johnny had no intention of showing any mercy to the ambitious Wu Zhenmo. "Space is broken." As Johnny's voice sounded, space cracks appeared one after another, directly tearing Wu Zhenmo's body apart, turning it into black hair, and then breaking it again, and being completely annihilated by the space cracks. The son of the Demon Lord, under the crushing of Johnny's terrible attack, turned directly into nothingness, leaving only a demonic roar full of fear and unwillingness in the void, and then it became quiet again. The place where Wu Zhenmo originally existed turned into a chaotic space, and then the space of the big world was naturally repaired. The cracks quickly closed, and soon returned to its original state. At this point, a trace of fear finally appeared in the depths of Mephisto's eyes. The witch-heart demon was dead, and he might not be able to escape the bad luck next. Mephisto had no anger or regret for the death of a son who betrayed him. As a selfish demon, he only cared about himself. Now he was thinking about how to keep his incarnation. Moreover, his incarnation left in the human world had been killed once by Johnny, which greatly reduced his strength and injured his main body. If the clone was killed again, he would become even weaker, and it would take a long time to recover. "Johnny, what the witch-heart demon did has nothing to do with me. I don't want to be your enemy." Seeing Johnny's eyes fall on him, Mephisto spoke, no longer proud and strong. He deeply knew that with the strength of his incarnation, he was no match for Johnny at all. The Abyss is a plane full of cunning betrayal and deception, which can be seen from Mephisto and his son. How could Johnny believe the words of the Abyss Demon, or the Abyss Demon Lord? "Mephisto, I told you that if you come out to cause trouble again, I will chase you to the Abyss Plane and destroy you along with your original body. Do you think I am kidding you?" As he spoke, Johnny's eyes showed his murderous intent. "Ha ha ha ha." Mephisto laughed strangely, feeling Johnny's determined murderous intent. He knew that his clone would definitely die today. At this time, Mephisto also let go completely and laughed wildly. "If that is the case, I will be very pleased. As long as you can come to the abyss plane, my original body will return to you 10 times or 100 times the pain you inflicted on my clone," Mephisto said viciously with his mental power amidst his wild laughter. "Mephisto, before I arrive at the abyss plane, there is another thing. Do you think I don't know that in addition to the Saint Venganza contract, you left something else in the world, a child born from the union of a demon and a human, right?" Johnny didn't want to kill Mephisto so easily, but continued to strike mercilessly. At the beginning of the plot of Ghost Rider, Johnny already knew a lot. Hearing Johnny's words, Mephisto's face became completely gloomy. He never thought that Johnny would know such a secret thing. Thinking of this, Mephisto looked at Johnny with fear in his eyes. He had made up his mind that no matter what the price, he would come as soon as possible to solve the huge threat of Johnny. Otherwise, his ambition to dominate the earth would definitely be ruined by the human in front of him. "Don't worry, I won't hurt your son, but I will find him, cut off your last thought, and make your clone never come to the earth." Johnny spoke word by word, making Mephisto more and more afraid of Johnny. A large amount of demonic aura was released from his body, desperately shaking the imprisoned space. "After I put an end to everything you have on earth, I will come to the abyss in person and have a good talk with you." As he spoke, Johnny shook the Saint Venganza contract in his hand. Through this contract, Johnny could clearly sense the location of Mephisto's body. With Johnny's powerful spatial ability, he could directly descend to the abyss. The fear in his eyes became more and more serious. Mephisto wanted to speak, but Johnny did not give him the opportunity. He stretched out his hand and gently waved, directly turning Mephisto's body into nothingness. Counting the previous one, this was the second time Johnny killed Mephisto's clone. The witch-heart demon and Mephisto were both solved by Johnny, and the fish-belly white in the sky became brighter and brighter. Finally, the first ray of dawn rose and illuminated the entire land. When the sun shone on the Saint Venganza village, the strong smell of original sin around it slowly hid, and the Ghost Rider also faded the flames on his body and turned into hot Johnny again. Chapter 152, Eliminating the Roots. Johnny waved his hand, and the huge momentum was restrained. After the battle just now, Saint Venganza became much calmer under the baptism of the rising sun. Johnny's powerful mental power penetrated into the contract and quickly found the soul mark of Mephisto in the contract. The only function of this soul mark is to fulfill the effectiveness of the contract. To put it bluntly, as long as Mephisto's soul mark exists, the souls of all the villagers of Saint Venganza village who are bound in the contract will always be restricted by the contract and can only stay in Saint Venganza forever. What Johnny has to do is to make the bondage of the contract invalid. After the powerful mental power penetrated into the contract, Mephisto's soul mark trembled under Johnny's completely crushing mental power, and was wrapped by Johnny's huge mental power, and was forcibly pulled out of the contract slowly. "Human, you will definitely regret what you did today. The great Lord of the Abyss will not let you go." Mephisto's soul mark was pulled out of the contract bit by bit, and a roar that Mephisto dared not to let go came out. This forced extraction will also cause certain damage to Mephisto's body, so Mephisto is so furious. "I've said this dozens of times. If you have this ability, you won't be killed by me all the time." Johnny sneered at the roar of Mephisto's soul mark, and ignored Mephisto's roar. His mental power surged, and he accelerated the speed of extracting this group of soul marks from the contract, causing Mephisto to suffer even greater pain. Just as Johnny extracted the soul mark from Mephisto's contract, the entire Saint Venganza was filled with gloomy winds. The dilapidated village, which seemed quite peaceful at sunrise, instantly became like a silver soul hell. The broken doors and windows shook violently, as if some terrible creatures would rush out. These are the pitiful souls that have been bound by the contract for decades. The originally pure souls. After Mephisto brought unprovoked disasters, all the simple villagers became part of Mephisto's conspiracy. Now feeling the loosening of the binding force of the contract, all these souls awakened, erupted with violent vibrations, vented the despair and anger of countless years, and wanted to break free from the shackles. In the roar of Mephisto's soul mark, Johnny's mental power was like a pair of irresistible big hands, constantly pulling out the soul mark, regardless of the damage caused to the soul mark. His purpose was simple. As long as he could find the spatial node of the Abyss Plane through the connection between the soul mark and Mephisto in the Abyss Plane. As for the pain Mephisto endured, would Johnny care? In the great changes of Saint Venganza, Mephisto's soul mark in the contract was finally pulled out by Johnny, and the effect of the contract disappeared instantly. After Mephisto's soul mark let out an unwilling roar, it was completely silent under the suppression of Johnny's tyrannical mental power, and turned into a translucent black energy ball, which was put away by Johnny. After losing the power of the contract, the parchment of the ancient contract slowly broke in Johnny's hands, turned into powder, and drifted away with the wind. In the entire St. Venganza village, all the souls made sharp cries and rushed out from every corner. The evil spirits that rushed out from every corner kept screaming happily. They were imprisoned here by the contract. The long-term resentment and anger made their souls change. The originally pure souls eventually turned into evil spirits with terrible power. However, as the contract was broken, the evil aura of all the evil spirits was rapidly dissipating, and these hideous and terrifying souls gradually calmed down and turned into translucent white. The evil spirits' faces were no longer hideous, but became much more peaceful and calm. Soon, the evil aura in the entire area dissipated, leaving only a lot of translucent white souls. These translucent souls, old and young, everyone can still vaguely see their original appearance. With the light of the rising sun, the translucent souls began to slowly dissipate between heaven and earth, and St. Venganza village also returned to complete peace. Johnny hugged his weak girlfriend Roshan, and both of them witnessed this scene. They could feel the gratitude of these evil spirits to the man in front of them as they turned into pure souls and dissipated. "Sir, thank you for saving Roshan and killing Mephisto and Wu Zhenmo." Looking at Johnny, Johnny showed gratitude in his eyes, and the raging demonic power in his body slowly calmed down. Johnny smiled indifferently at Johnny's gratitude. His main purpose was Wu Zhenmo and Mephisto, and saving the woman in front of him was just a matter of convenience. "Hot Johnny, I have seen your performance before. It is very touching." Johnny spoke, making Johnny and Roshan stunned. "But you only said one thing right. Wu Zhenmo is dead, but Mephisto is still alive, and if no action is taken, he will soon come to this world again, with his full strength." Johnny spoke slowly, but what he said made Johnny's face change drastically. "Sir, what does this mean?" "I'm sure you already know the identity of Mephisto. The Lord of the Abyss Plane? The one I just killed was just his incarnation walking on Earth. His real body is still in the Abyss Plane. Many years ago, his clone combined with a human woman and gave birth to a descendant with demon blood. This descendant can withstand all the power of Mephisto. Through the ritual, Mephisto can occupy this body and appear on Earth." Johnny explained Johnny's doubts. "Now, I need you to find Mephisto's descendant, the child, and prevent Mephisto from coming." After explaining, Johnny was not polite and prepared to hand the matter over to Johnny. "No problem, but how can I find that child?" Johnny naturally had no choice but to completely eradicate Mephisto. He agreed without thinking too much. "You don't have to look for it. You are Mephisto's knight. Your body contains the same demonic power as Mephisto. With the guidance of this ability, you can naturally find the child." Johnny smiled slightly. Johnny nodded, followed Johnny's instructions, closed his eyes, and the demonic power in his body burst out. He soon sensed that there was a connection somewhere on the earth that echoed the demonic power in his body. "Sir, may I know your identity?" Johnny opened his eyes and asked politely. "Security Director Johnny." "Johnny, this is a communicator. If you can't solve it, you can contact me through this bead." Chapter 153 Amazing Progress. Johnny took off a communication bead and handed it to Johnny. Then he moved his body and disappeared from the spot, leaving Johnny and Roxanne in shock. "Johnny," he said. He was Johnny, the director of the Security Council, the Johnny who defeated the mutant apocalypse and saved the Earth. Perhaps not many people know about Johnny, but Johnny's name has become well known after the Battle of Apocalypse. "So it was him. After so many years, I thought he should be older, but I didn't expect him to be so young," Johnny murmured, and then quickly came to his senses. "Roxanne, I'll take you away. You heard that the demon Mephisto will come to the earth again. I must stop him. I will explain all this to you slowly after it's over." Johnny helped the still weak Roxanne up and said softly, after Roxanne experienced the witch's heart demon. Although she was extremely confused about all this, she heard Johnny's urgent tone and finally didn't say much, and nodded gently. "Johnny, I'll wait for you to come back. Be careful." After handing over the matter of Mephisto's bloodline left in the world to Ghost Rider Johnny didn't worry too much. Now he revealed the news to Ghost Rider in advance, so that the plot could happen in advance, and Ghost Rider could be fully prepared. In addition, Mephisto's clone was killed twice by him, so Ghost Rider would obviously be much easier to deal with. "Director, you may not have time to pay attention to the resurrection of the devil now." Natasha walked into Johnny's office. "Oh?" Johnny raised his eyebrows, slightly puzzled. "Take a look at this. People who disappeared for 70 years can be resurrected again." Natasha moved her hands, and a three-dimensional picture suddenly appeared. In the picture, a huge S.H.I.E.L.D. fishing boat. A group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents appeared on the boat. The whole picture is a glacier, and everyone is obviously carrying out salvage operations. At a certain moment, everyone seems to have discovered something, with great surprise on their faces. The huge steel chain of the fishing boat slowly rose, pulling out a huge object from the broken glacier. It looked like some wreckage of an airplane. "Have you found Steve Rogers?" Johnny understood after seeing this. "You know all this?" Johnny made a guess based on his intuition, and Natasha showed a surprised expression on her face. "Where are the coordinates?" Johnny asked. "After Steve's plane crashed, the salvage work in S.H.I.E.L.D. has never stopped in the past few decades, and Johnny has always paid attention to it. With the advancement of technology, large-scale searches for the wreckage of Steve's plane are more efficient. Hard work pays off, and finally found Steve's crashed plane." Peggy tapped the communication bead in her hand, and immediately transmitted the coordinates to Johnny. "Director, Steve Rogers' body has been urgently sent back to the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters and is under strict protection. However, this is not the most surprising thing. Through our insider in S.H.I.E.L.D., we got a very surprising news. Steve Rogers' body, which has been frozen for 70 years, still has life fluctuations." Natasha spoke mysteriously and told this explosive news, hoping to see a surprised expression on Johnny's face. However, the result disappointed her. Johnny looked calm and did not show any surprise. "Director, don't you have any idea about the resurrection of a person who has been frozen for 70 years? Staring at Johnny for a long time, Natasha, as a top agent, did not see any surprise fluctuations in Johnny's eyes. She could only give up helplessly and say coquettishly in a rage, "No." Seeing the always cold Natasha showing such a charming expression, Johnny smiled slightly, casually hugged Natasha's delicate body, and began to explore dishonestly. "Natasha, Steve Rogers is the first person in history to carry out the original version of the Super Soldier Serum. We have made considerable progress in the research of the Super Soldier Serum. Do you think I should be surprised?" Feeling Natasha's body temperature slowly rising and her body twisting unconsciously, Johnny explained. Johnny's words made Natasha slightly stunned. After experiencing the first stage of perfect super soldier enhancement, Natasha's physical fitness has made a huge leap, but she herself is not fully familiar with it, and she did not think about it for a while. However, now she does not have much time to slowly think about the first stage of super soldier enhancement, because Johnny's big hand has penetrated into her body. After a period of lovemaking, Johnny called everyone together. When he and Natasha were applauding for love just now, Natasha mentioned that the Security Council had made a lot of breakthroughs recently. When everyone gathered together, they saw the blush on Natasha's face that had not completely faded, which made Medusa and Emma laugh secretly. Although Samuel and others were secretly complaining, they could only pretend that they were unaware. Ordinary people would have been old by the age of the director. Perhaps only a strong man like Johnny can maintain a strong combat effectiveness in all aspects. "I heard that you have been busy recently. Tell me about your achievements." "You're welcome." Seeing the eyes of the crowd, Johnny didn't care at all. After a cough, he blatantly changed the subject. "Director, the difficulties of the Sentinel robots have been overcome. The Mystique X gene you proposed played a decisive role. The current Sentinel robots can temporarily use 2 or 3 different mutant abilities. They only need to be continuously improved to mature and be put into the war. Bolivar spoke first, without any intention of being polite, and his face was full of confidence. Compared with the agents who have undergone super soldier enhancement, how is the combat effectiveness? Johnny nodded slightly and asked. Johnny's words made Bolivar slightly stunned. The confident look on his face was restrained a lot, and he looked a little embarrassed. Director, it's like this. If the first generation of Sentinel robots improve their capabilities, their combat power will definitely surpass any agent who has undergone the first stage of super soldier enhancement. However, there are still some defects in artificial intelligence. We are now working together to develop it. After a hesitation, Bolivar finally explained. Johnny was also stunned, but soon reacted. According to what Bolivar said, the Sentinel robots are indeed powerful, but they are not as good as the agents who have undergone the first stage of super soldier enhancement. This is like using a cannon to hit a mosquito. It lacks accuracy. Even if it is powerful, it is a waste of effort if it can't hit the mosquito. Chapter 154 Enrollment Expansion Plan. I understand what you mean. It's great to have such progress. Let's take it step by step. However, before artificial intelligence is fully developed, you can consider remote control. Johnny nodded slightly. He was quite satisfied with the project that Bolivar was in charge of. Johnny's words made Bolivar's eyes light up. Obviously, he found a short-term goal. He nodded and fell into deep thought. Samuel, what about you? Seeing that Bolivar had understood what he meant, Johnny's eyes moved slightly and fell on Samuel. Combining Wakanda's heart-shaped grass with the power of Black Panther, super soldier serum and genetic breakthroughs achieved in recent years, the super soldier plan has taken shape. After receiving your instructions, the scientific research department has mass-produced 3-stage drugs, which can be strengthened at any time. This time, the 3 types of genetic strengthening are more systematic and complete than before. The highest level of strengthening is almost creating a Superman. Samuel was obviously quite satisfied with his research. After Samuel's explanation, Johnny also understood what he meant by the 3 stages of super soldier strengthening. These 3 stages are primary, intermediate and advanced super soldier transformation. After completing the transformation to a primary super soldier, the physical fitness of an ordinary agent is similar to that of Steve now, and one person can handle dozens of ordinary agents without any problem. After completing the transformation to a mid-level super soldier, the strength is equivalent to that of Peggy and Natasha, and the quality in all aspects is nearly 20 times stronger than that of a primary super soldier. The transformation to a high-level super soldier is also the most demanding transformation. If completed, the strength will definitely reach a perverted level, and the combat power of a single person will be extremely strong, and there will be no problem fighting monsters like abominations. Not bad. Since the super soldier plan has made a huge breakthrough, the Security Council can consider expanding the enrollment, Johnny said with a smile. Expand the enrollment? Hearing Johnny's words, everyone was slightly stunned, and obviously did not understand what Johnny meant. With the current power of the Security Council, it is comparable to a country on Earth, but there is still a huge gap between this and my plan, so whether in terms of technology or power, we need to continue to expand. Everyone, Steve Rogers has awakened. If my guess is correct, the entertainment projects will soon become richer. Johnny showed a clear smile on his face. Although everyone didn't quite understand what Johnny meant, something that Johnny could call an entertainment project would definitely not be simple. Taking the abomination Bronski out for activities was one of Johnny's previous entertainment projects. Thinking of this, everyone felt a little pressure. I see. There is another thing. The blood sample of the Bronski you brought back has been studied almost completely. It is possible to reverse this genetic mutation and restore his normal body shape. If he is transformed, he should be able to freely transform between a normal person and an abomination, Samuel said with a smile. Hearing about Bronski, Johnny remembered that it had been a while since he brought Hulk and Bronski back. Because of Tony's matter, he forgot about it. How loyal is Bronski now? Johnny asked after a little thought. After being moved by you, Director, he has become much more honest. We have arranged for mutants who are proficient in psychic abilities to sense him. There is no problem, Natasha said with a smile. In this case, let him strengthen the intermediate super soldier. If there are any difficult problems, he can be handed over to solve them. Johnny made a decision quickly. Sometimes, Bronski can just come forward, just like the last time Tony's incident, which not only saved Tony Stark, but also allowed Bronski to fully move. By the way, how is the current big data of the Security Council's Scientific Research Department? Johnny asked before Peggy left. The recruitment of the Scientific Research Department has been going on, but the control is very strict. Only scientists who meet the requirements we set are eligible to receive invitations from the Security Council. Moreover, before entering the Security Council, they must also undergo strict tests to ensure that there is no problem with loyalty. Not only the Security Council headquarters has set up scientific research departments, but all branches have also set up scientific research departments. Many researchers, in addition to being members of the Security Council, can be university professors, businessmen, and company chairmen. The Security Council will not interfere with their lives. By the way, the new batch of recruitment lists have just come out. Do you want to take a look? Hearing Johnny mention this, Medusa operated the communication bead in her hand, and soon a pile of information and lists appeared in Johnny's hands. Eric Selvig. In the field of aerospace technology, Reed Richards. Johnny quickly scanned the area and soon saw several names that he was very familiar with. Director, the Eric Selvig you mentioned is a university professor who not only studies space theory, but also theology. Many people think that he is not smart, but after the investigation of the Security Council, he is a talent. It's just that his research funds are insufficient, so he has not achieved any outstanding results. The introduction of Selvig on the recruitment list is indeed not very outstanding, but Johnny knows that it is not because Selvig is not good, but because he is poor. To study this kind of thing, it is not enough to rely on knowledge alone, but also money. Otherwise, how do you think Tony Stark will make so many awesome technological armors in the future? He has money. Well, I know that Eric Selvig can be recruited. As for Reed Richards, it seems that the research funding is not sufficient. Reed Richards' information shows that Reed himself has some cooperation with the military and founded his own company, focusing on aerospace technology. However, due to funding issues, the company is in a difficult situation of bankruptcy. In the final analysis, it is still poverty. I will take some time to meet Reed Richards. You should go and do other things first, Johnny said. Although Peggy was puzzled by Johnny's plan to recruit him personally, she did not say much. She nodded and quickly started to do things according to Johnny's instructions. What Peggy did not know was that when Johnny met Reed Richards, he was very interested. Eric Selvig was okay. He could help a lot in the research of the Cosmic Cube, but he did not meet the conditions for Johnny to recruit him personally. Reed Richards is different. As the future Mr. Fantastic, the famous god of magic, it is worth Johnny's personal visit. Johnny knows Reed. He has a genius-level IQ and is proficient in almost all fields of science and technology, including time travel, space travel, biochemistry, robotics, computers, communications, synthetic polymers, mutation, transportation, holography, power generation, spectrum analysis, etc. If we rank the most awesome scientists in the entire Marvel Universe, Reed will definitely be on the list. Chapter 155 Recruiting Mr. Fantastic. With the power in Johnny's hands, it is not difficult to grasp Reed's movements. As the sun sets, in an ordinary fast food restaurant, a luxury car worth more than $10 million slowly stops, attracting the attention of countless diners. Everyone's eyes are full of surprise and envy. To be able to afford such a luxury car, the owner's identity is definitely extraordinary. Occasionally racing is also a good choice. Johnny slowly got off the luxury car and entered the fast food restaurant under the attention of everyone. "Excuse me, sir, what do you need?" The waiter of the fast food restaurant could hardly believe his eyes when he saw Johnny coming in. A rich man who can afford such a luxury car would actually come to their fast food restaurant? "I want to chat with the gentleman over there," Just give me a cup of coffee. Johnny smiled slightly, looking handsome and extraordinary, which made the young waiter blush slightly. He couldn't help but speed up his heartbeat, nodded and quickly lowered his head and left. Reed, who was sitting in the corner of the fast food restaurant, was looking depressed at this time, and didn't notice the luxury car parked outside the fast food restaurant and Johnny, who was walking slowly. "Can I sit here?" Johnny's voice startled Reed. "Of course, please." Reed glanced at Johnny and said casually, then continued to lower his head with a distressed look. Johnny sat down and saw that Reed was still silent and ignored him at all, so he couldn't help but laugh. "Dr. Reed Richards, you look like you are troubled by something." Johnny spoke slowly, looking at Reed with a keen eye, revealing a strong interest in his eyes. "Do you know me?" Reed was slightly stunned when Johnny called his name, and then he raised his head and looked at Johnny, with a little doubt in his eyes. "Dr. Reed, I have heard a lot about you, which is why I appear in front of you today. Perhaps I can help with your research project," Johnny said calmly with a kind smile on his face. "Do you want to invest in my project?" Hearing Johnny's words, Reed's eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light, and he began to look at the stranger in front of him. Although Johnny didn't have a strong aura, Reed could still feel the aura formed by his high position for many years. Johnny's identity was definitely not simple. However, the project that Reed wanted to do now was not something that could be solved with money in the conventional sense. Not to mention the space agency. The budget for the project alone was more than $1 billion, and the benefits were very uncertain. If things went wrong, it would be a waste of time. Reed didn't think that the stranger who appeared in front of him would be so kind to help him after learning the success rate of his research project. Thinking of this, the light in Reed's eyes gradually dimmed and was replaced by depression again. "Thank you for your kindness, but the research of my project may be a little troublesome. Perhaps, not an ordinary company can afford to invest in it." Reed said this out of kindness, but if someone else said this, the other person might be angry. Because another way to understand this sentence is that my research funds are too expensive and you don't have the strength yet. Reed is a genius, but that is in research. In life and communication, he relies more on emotional intelligence, and obviously, his emotional intelligence is not enough. Moreover, Reed, who is immersed in his own research, did not even know the other party's identity and refused. "Haha, Dr. Reed. You don't have to rush to refuse. Introduce yourself." "My name is Johnny." "Johnny?" Reed tried hard to search the names of the chairman or shareholders of major listed companies in his mind, but he couldn't remember a Johnny. "Sorry, I haven't heard of it." "Huh?" Wait. Just when Reed wanted to say sorry that I haven't heard of your name, his heart suddenly trembled. "Johnny? This name, it seems that I have heard it somewhere." Johnny. Damn, I can't remember it. But I must have heard it somewhere." Just when Reed frowned and thought hard, Johnny smiled and took the initiative to speak. "I have another identity, that is, the current director of the Security Council," Johnny added, saying his other identity, with a faint smile on his face. He had plenty of patience for geniuses. "Security Council." "Wait, Johnny, the director of the Security Council?" Reed quickly reacted after being reminded by Johnny, his eyes full of shock. He finally knew who the stranger in front of him was. As a genius scientist, his memory was definitely very strong. Although Reed focused on research and rarely came into contact with the outside world, he was still very clear about the meaning of the Security Council and the director of the Security Council. In the scientific research community, the Scientific Research Department of the Security Council is the holy land that all researchers dream of. Reed is a research maniac. In addition to focusing on his own research, he doesn't care about anything else. The Scientific Research Department of the Security Council is a place that can meet all his conditions. The Security Council has always valued talents. "We will extend an olive branch to scientists who have performed outstandingly in various fields, as long as they are willing to join the Security Council. No matter what the project is, the Security Council has sufficient funds and resources. Of course, this is based on mutual consent. If Mr. Reed is not interested in my proposal." Looking at Reed's horrified expression, Johnny still smiled and spoke. If Reed could ignore Johnny's words just now, in his eyes, Johnny is the savior. Wait, Mr. Johnny, I'm so sorry, I didn't know your identity at first, and I was a little presumptuous. It is absolutely my honor to be able to join the Security Council. Don't forget what happened just now. Reed's attitude changed 360 degrees. He just ignored Johnny, but now he wanted to rush up and lick his ass. His project had already found countless ways, which made Reed fall into despair. Johnny, the savior, suddenly appeared, and he was afraid that he had offended Johnny just now. Reed didn't know how huge the power controlled by Johnny was, but he knew very well that such a big boss, once offended, would never give him a second chance. To put it bluntly, he might not think highly of him. Dr. Reed, don't be so nervous. I wonder what you think of my proposal. Johnny had a faint smile on his face. He was not angry because of Reed's previous disregard. Now seeing Reed's attitude, he was secretly happy. As long as he could recruit the future Godmunda, this deal would be a sure win. After hearing Johnny's words, Reed completely became a nodding bug. Just when he was at his wit's end, surprises came one after another, making him almost excited and lost his mind. After Reed agreed to join the Security Council, Johnny was not polite and took him directly to the research center of the headquarters, so that Samuel, Bolivar and others could get to know Reed. Reed, since you agreed to join the Security Council, get familiar with it first, and then come to me to talk about your project. Seeing Johnny's attention to Reed, Samuel, Bolivar and others would naturally not neglect it. However, whether Reed is worthy of Johnny's attention or not, Howard, Zola and others still need to test it carefully. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156 Vibranium Energy Extraction Technology. Johnny's purpose of bringing Reed directly to Howard and others was to let them get to know each other better. After Reed joined the Security Council, Howard, Zola and others gave him many difficult questions one after another. Of course, this was not deliberately targeting him, but to see the true level of Reed, a young man, and whether he could live up to Johnny's attention. However, after several rounds of tests, Howard and others all looked at Reed differently. The reason was very simple. Reed's strength was much stronger than they expected. Reed had deep attainments in almost all scientific research fields, and Reed successfully passed the tests of Howard and others. After passing the tests of Howard and other bigwigs, Reed's status in the Security Council naturally rose, and several bigwigs in the scientific research department would often praise Reed in front of Johnny. Samuel, do you want to see me for something? That day, Samuel contacted Johnny through a message, saying that he had something to report. Standing in front of Johnny, Samuel seemed a little excited. Obviously he had encountered something good. Director, this is it. Combining vibranium technology with our research on energy, we have found an external device to control the mutation of Bruce Banner and Bronski's body. Samuel said. Oh, take me to see it. Johnny raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't expect Samuel and others to be so powerful and come up with a solution so quickly. In the research center, Johnny saw Bruce Banner and Abomination Bronski. Bruce Banner's eyes were calm, and there was no anger on his body. Instead, he seemed very quiet, even a little shy. Seeing Johnny coming, he quickly stood up and greeted him. Abomination Bronski was still strong, and the bone armor and bone spurs on his body were even more ferocious than the last time Johnny saw him. But when he saw Johnny, his violent momentum quickly converged, and his eyes became much more respectful and careful. Master. The huge body of Abomination crouched and saluted respectfully in front of Johnny. Johnny's eyes moved slightly, and he saw that both Bruce Banner and Abomination Bronski had a strange device on their chests, which was connected to their limbs through special wires made of vibranium. Director, this is an energy extraction device developed for their special physiques. This device, combined with energy extraction and vibranium technology, can effectively suppress the energy burst from their bodies when they lose control, ensuring that they will not cause great damage. Seeing Johnny's eyes, Samuel explained. Show it to me. Johnny said. "Let me do it." Although Bruce Banner was quite unhappy about the feeling when he transformed, in order to prove that he was safe in front of Johnny, a little sacrifice was necessary. While talking, Bruce Banner began to recall some things that made him extremely angry. Thinking of these things, Banner's face quickly showed a bit of pain, and he covered his face with his hands and inserted them into his hair, and his body was trembling slightly. Obviously, these memories are definitely not good for Bruce Banner. Just when Banner fell into this extreme emotion, the skin on his hands suddenly showed a hint of green, his meridians bulged, and a violent aura was faintly emanating. He's going to lose control again. The two agents responsible for guarding Banner were shocked when they saw this. However, just when Banner was almost out of control and transformed again, the vibranium energy extraction device on his chest suddenly flashed, quickly absorbing the rioting power in Banner's body. Johnny waved his hand slightly, indicating that the two agents should not be too nervous and let Banner's body change. Not to mention that Banner now has a vibranium energy extraction device on his body, which can extract his out-of-control energy at any time. Even without this device, Banner can't successfully turn into the Hulk, and with his strength, he can easily suppress it. As Bruce Banner's body twitched slightly, the energy extraction device kept running. Soon, under the absorption of the energy extraction device, the green on Bruce Banner's skin surface slowly faded, and the whole person returned to normal. Who? Bruce Banner crouched slightly, his chest heaving, and took a few breaths to finally calm down. After his eyes regained clarity, he showed a bit of joy. Facts have proved that with this device, he can indeed get rid of the nightmare of losing control and turning into the Hulk. Director? Samuel looked at Johnny. Not bad. Bronski, you try it too. Johnny nodded slightly, very satisfied with the effect of the energy extraction device. Yes, Master. Bronski agreed in a muffled voice. He is different from Bruce Banner. Banner is extremely resistant to the power of the Hulk, while he is madly pursuing this power. Therefore, Bronski is a little reluctant to use this device to extract the surging energy in his body. Roar! With a roar, Bronski's momentum was released without hindrance, and his already huge body exploded, causing the faces of several ordinary agents around him to change slightly. At this time, in the eyes of several people, Bronski, just by relying on his momentum, made them feel suffocated like a prehistoric beast in front of them. However, at a certain moment, after the aura of the abomination reached a certain point, the energy extraction device on his chest shone brightly, connected to the limbs of the abomination, and began to rapidly extract scattered energy, causing the abomination's roar to stop. After several transformations, Bronski's body has already shown a tendency to surpass the previous Hulk, so the energy extraction of this energy device has become particularly fierce. Bronski's face was hideous, as a large amount of energy was extracted by the vibranium energy extraction device. The aura on his body also dropped sharply, but in just a short moment, it became much more. As the energy extraction progressed, Bronski's body also began to change. The bone spurs shrank, the bone armor converged and disappeared into the flesh, and the body size also shrank rapidly. I didn't expect that when Bronski burst out with all his strength, the energy extraction device actually made his body transform back to normal. Johnny was a little surprised. He didn't expect that after the energy extraction, the abomination's body would recover. In the midst of his unhappy mood, his body continued to shrink, and finally returned to human form. His body seemed a little thin, and there were many scars, but fortunately, it was not much different from that of an ordinary person. Bronski, you are not going to face us naked like this, are you? Seeing Bronski still a little dazed with his naked body, Johnny smiled slightly. Bronski was also startled and embarrassed. When he was huge, he only had a pair of big shorts. Now that he has returned to normal, he has no clothes at all. Soon, an agent brought clothes and gave them to Bronski to wear, which avoided a lot of embarrassment. Not bad. It looks much more comfortable this way. Bronski, you should go out and exercise more and get some sun. Seeing Bronski's pale complexion after he returned to normal, Johnny said with concern. But Bronski obviously had some misunderstandings, and the shadow of the word activity has not been dispelled. Chapter 157, The Death of Nick Fury, Director of SHIELD. After some inspection, Samuel nodded with satisfaction. The conditions of Bruce Banner and Abomination Bronski have stabilized. After such a release of energy, they will not go berserk again in a short time. Even if they go berserk, the energy extraction device developed by Vibranium Technology can ensure that the two will not pose too much threat. Director, there is no problem. They are both in a very safe state. Samuel looked at the medical examination report in his hand, shook his big head, and said with a firm face, Bruce Banner was delighted to get Samuel's confirmation. With this sentence, it means that he will have more freedom in the future. Well, Bruce, and Bronski, since you have this device, you can stabilize your situation. You can consider better activities in the future. As for the specific arrangements, just discuss with Medusa and Samuel. Johnny nodded slightly, which made Bruce Banner's face more joyful, and he thanked him repeatedly. But relatively speaking, for Bruce Banner, Johnny would rather see another him, the Green Giant Hulk, who has an ever-increasing power and can fight against the power of an army. However, when Bruce Banner himself has not yet completely controlled his transformation and eliminated his inner demons, Johnny will not force him. Director, I want to talk to you about my research project. Johnny was interrupted by Reed Richards when he was about to leave. After getting familiar with the scientific research department of the Security Council, Reed devoted himself to his research project. Well, Reed, just say whatever you want. You joined the Security Council and you are one of us. Johnny smiled lightly and looked very warm. With Johnny's permission, Reed showed an excited smile on his face, and skillfully operated the communication bead developed by the Security Council in combination with Wakanda technology to project the ideas in his research project. Director, my research shows that exposure to high-energy cosmic storms generated by the solar wind of the corona may cause the evolution of life on early life planets. 6 weeks later, a cloud with the above characteristics will pass through the Earth's orbit. According to Reed's narration, the picture was also changing rapidly. The pictures projected by the communication beads were all holographic projections, which could clearly and directly understand what Reed wanted to express. If we can conduct research at close range in space, it will fundamentally advance our understanding of the structure of human genetic organization. As for countless diseases, it will extend lifespan and make the next generation live longer, healthier and stronger. After Reed's explanation as straightforward as possible, Johnny also understood Reed's idea. Reed, you mean, in 6 weeks, you want to leave the Earth and go into space to directly observe and study this cosmic storm? Johnny didn't know much about professional academic terms, but according to the image projected on Reed's screen, in Johnny's opinion, it was a group of radiating energy. Yes, Director, the high-energy cosmic storms produced by the solar wind of the sun have a very long cycle, and it is very rare to be close to the Earth's orbit. If you miss this opportunity, you will have to wait for thousands of years to encounter it again. Reed nodded, his eyes full of expectation. Well, if this research is successful as you said, it will indeed bring unimaginable progress to mankind. The Security Council will support you to complete the research, but I have an idea. The humans you refer to should not include mutants with mutant abilities. Then what will happen to their genes under the radiation of cosmic storms? Johnny's mind is active, and he quickly considered the issue of mutants. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, Sebastian Shaw attempted to provoke a world war, an irreversible nuclear war. Nuclear radiation is fatal to ordinary people, but mutants have strong vitality and will survive safely under nuclear radiation, and will also be strengthened to a certain extent. This reminded Johnny of the cosmic storm, which was also radiation, and Reed said that the cosmic storm was so powerful, maybe it would bring a surprise. Director, your idea is indeed feasible. I will discuss it with Trask and others later to improve this plan. By the way, I have 2 or 3 assistants, all of whom are partners in this project. When they come. When mentioning the assistants, Reed's expression was a little hesitant, not knowing whether Johnny would agree. No problem, as long as the people you bring will not pose a threat to the Security Council, and you must pay attention to your own safety when conducting research projects. Johnny didn't need to think. He knew that the assistants Reed was talking about were the original team of the Fantastic Four. When he got here, Johnny had guessed that the plot of the Fantastic Four should start soon. But this time, the plot did not include the evil Doctor of Doom Victor who funded the Fantastic Four to enter space and suffer from the radiation of the cosmic storm. However, Doctor of Doom Victor is still a tyrant, and without him, the plot made Johnny feel that it was less interesting. Reed's request was briefly told to Samuel, who nodded in agreement. Reed was an excellent junior in his eyes. In the Security Council, there was no intrigue over interests, only competition in technology. Here, before Johnny had finished dealing with the affairs of the research center, an urgent message had caused the communication bead in his hand to vibrate violently. The severity of the message had reached a very high level to cause such a vibration. Johnny's eyes moved slightly, and he casually tapped the communication bead on his wrist. A lot of information had already appeared in front of him. In it, an encrypted document was opened, and several lines of typing suddenly appeared. SHIELD. Director Nick Fury was assassinated, and his life and death are unknown. SHIELD is in great chaos. Under the text, there were several pictures that were not very clear. The one-eyed black man Nick Fury was in a broken SHIELD standard truck, covered in blood. It was obvious that the situation had reached a very urgent level. And after this document, there was another document. The long-missing Captain America Steve Rogers betrayed S.H.I.E.L.D., colluded with S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury, leaked confidential information, and endangered national security. Another video of many S.H.I.E.L.D. agents hunting down Steve Rogers. In the video, Steve Rogers rushed out of the S.H.I.E.L.D.'s high-rise elevator holding Captain America's shield, jumped down dozens of meters, and fell heavily to the ground a few seconds later and quickly escaped. Interesting, so interesting. I've been waiting for so many years, and I almost forgot about these bugs until they jumped out, but now that they have surfaced, I have to settle the old accounts with you. After reading the two emergency messages, Johnny's eyes flashed with a gleam of brilliance. Hydra finally reappeared. Chapter 158. The Secret Buried for 30 Years. Johnny's judgment was correct. After years of dormancy, Hydra finally lost its patience. Since the Red Skull was destroyed by Captain America Steve Rogers after World War II, Hydra has been completely dormant. Usually, they only engage in small fights and there is no huge conspiracy. Moreover, S.H.I.E.L.D. has been restraining Hydra, which has allowed Hydra to maintain a low-key development for many years. Johnny's appearance happened to control the Morgan creature secretly supported by Hydra, and he had a feud with Hydra. For this reason, Hydra once considered taking action against Johnny. However, before Hydra could make any move, the Cuban Missile Crisis broke out, and Johnny's reputation was greatly shaken. He shocked both the United States and the Soviet Union and resolved Sebastian Shaw's conspiracy. When Baron Skrat of Hydra got the news, he had a strong fear of Johnny and put away his thoughts. An enemy like Johnny far exceeds the threat posed by S.H.I.E.L.D. to Hydra, and for the time being, it is not something that the severely injured Hydra can chew. Afterwards, Johnny appeared in the Resurrection of Apocalypse, the battle between the Abomination on the streets of New York and the Hulk. Over the past few decades, Johnny's prestige has reached a level that makes Hydra fear him. Skrat's hatred for Johnny has long been buried in the corner. However, just because Hydra has no idea about Johnny does not mean that Johnny will forget Hydra, the bug hidden in the shadows. S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra. It's another good show. Natasha, S.H.I.E.L.D. is in chaos, and we don't need to be too cautious about the eyes we planted. Let them keep a close eye on all S.H.I.E.L.D.'s actions without being exposed. The key is several confidential locations of S.H.I.E.L.D., the mansion and the Cube prison, as well as S.H.I.E.L.D.'s confidential material library for so many years. After a brief thought, Johnny made a decision and issued an order. Now that S.H.I.E.L.D. is in turmoil, he doesn't care how Hydra jumps, but as the director of the World Security Council, S.H.I.E.L.D. has imprisoned many special mortals and cannot let them cause trouble. Moreover, after so many years of development, there should be some things from outside the Earth in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s material library, which may bring surprises to Johnny. I understand, Director. As for this matter, Do we need to intervene through official channels? Johnny doesn't need to say more about these things. As a top agent, Natasha has been in charge of the intelligence department of the Security Council for many years. She has already had considerable intuition and judgment and made arrangements in advance. No, the Security Council is not a nanny. We just watch the show. When I want to appear, I will naturally appear. By the way, Captain America, you can arrange someone to track it and see if there will be much progress. Johnny smiled slightly. At the beginning of the turmoil, he had no intention of showing up. Once he showed up, the chaos would not be able to continue. By then, Hydra would hide deeper, and it would be very troublesome to uproot it. Johnny likes to simplify things and is most afraid of trouble. I understand, Director. I will pass the latest information to you in time through the communication beads. Natasha chuckled and understood Johnny's thoughts. The various information obtained by Natasha's special agents for tracking were all within Johnny's expectations. The development of the matter was similar to the original plot. The only difference was that Steve Rogers was not accompanied by the Black Widow. The exploration of the conspiracy between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra was also completed independently by Steve Rogers alone, until he found the military camp where S.H.I.E.L.D. was first built decades ago and approached the center of this chaos. Director, S.H.I.E.L.D. is no longer S.H.I.E.L.D. It is filled with a large number of Hydra members. Almost all the undercovers we have planted are under control. The last message shows that there are a large number of weapons and agents in S.H.I.E.L.D. They should be tracking Steve Rogers. The message passed by Natasha clearly marked the large number of personnel transfers within S.H.I.E.L.D. and the location of Steve Rogers that was tracked. Captain's current situation doesn't look good. The place where S.H.I.E.L.D. was first built more than 70 years ago. I believe Captain will see an old friend who surprised him there. After receiving the news, Johnny smiled a little. Johnny, who was familiar with the plot, knew that the place where S.H.I.E.L.D. was first built more than 70 years ago now stored the last achievement left by the late Nazi scientist Arnim Zola. He transferred all his consciousness into his body, which was equivalent to living in an alternative way. It was also a feat in the science and technology community at that time. With an unpredictable smile, Johnny's body moved slightly, as if he had merged into the space, and disappeared silently in the room. Camp Lehigh in New Jersey, an old military church that has been abandoned for many years. Here, more than 70 years ago, was a temporary recruit training camp during the war, and Steve Rogers also walked out of Camp Lehigh and was selected as a lucky man to be enhanced as a super soldier. Now, there is an abandoned arsenal here, and Steve Rogers is facing Arnim Zola, who has turned into a cold machine, with a look of surprise. Steve, the Insight project requires insight, and this insight was already possessed by Hydra more than half a century ago. Arnim Zora's mechanical voice was filled with paranoid madness. Even after his death and turning into a cold machine, he still couldn't forget the project he had participated in. Zora, tell me, what is the purpose of the Insight project? Steve Rogers stared at Zora's vague image on the screen and asked. The answer is fascinating, but Captain, you won't be able to hear it even if you die. Zora's image on the screen showed a strange smile and spoke to Steve. What do you mean? Rogers' face changed, and before he could react, all the passages in the huge space where Zora lived were instantly closed, and the heavy iron door fell heavily. Zora, do you think you can trap me like this? The heavy sound of the passage being closed made Steve Rogers' face darken slightly, but he was not very nervous. With his strong physique and the indestructible vibranium shield in his hand, it was not a big problem to open a passage to see the light of day even underground. He didn't intend to lock you up, but now, a short-range missile is rapidly falling towards here. Although your physique is much stronger than that of an ordinary person, under this level of explosion, the result will not change much. A calm voice sounded lightly, making Steve's slightly depressed heart tremble violently. Looking at the source of the voice, Johnny's calm figure seemed to step out of nothingness, from unreality to reality, and appeared in Steve Rogers' eyes. Chapter 159, Are you stubborn? Then be the experimental material. Who are you? Johnny's miraculous appearance made Steve Rogers' face change slightly, and he seemed a little cautious. However, although he felt a strong sense of oppression from Johnny, he did not sense any hostility. My name is Johnny, the director of the World Security Council. Captain Rogers, you should have heard of me. Johnny smiled and slowly walked out of the shadows. Johnny, you are Johnny, how did you find this place? Before Steve Rogers could speak, Zora's mechanical voice revealed some surprise. Although he was already a dead man, as a member of Hydra, he still knew about Johnny's glorious record. In Hydra, Johnny was an absolute taboo, and no one wanted to offend such an enemy. You have been dead for more than 30 years, and you still have so many words. Next, you answer whatever I ask. Johnny glanced at the big head Zora on the screen and spoke lightly. Zora was able to transfer his consciousness into a data stream and survive in such an alternative way. He was quite capable and deserved more comments from Johnny. HMPH. I know you, but I won't answer any of your questions. I've already done what I should do. I've long been tired of my current situation, so don't try to threaten me. There are less than 3 minutes before the short-range missiles fall. Zora is now completely desperate and doesn't care about life or death at all. Johnny's threat naturally doesn't exist. I understand. Since you don't want to take the opportunity I gave you, it doesn't matter. I don't like to force people. Johnny nodded, but didn't continue to question Zora. Instead, he smiled slightly. Before Zora could continue to speak, the power of space had already permeated the entire underground area, enveloping Zora's entire body. In Steve Rogers' shocked eyes, the entire space moved slightly, and Zora's entire huge mechanical body completely disappeared. Johnny smiled faintly. If Zora was still alive, it would be difficult to put him into the space he opened up. However, Zora in this state could become a machine. He was no longer a life in the conventional sense. He could be easily stored in the storage space as an object. Since he was unwilling to cooperate, he could just make use of the waste. He could pack it back to the Security Council and hand it over to Samuel and others. He was a good test subject anyway. In other words, research material. Arnim Zora, who was stubborn, didn't know that after he looked down on life and death, he would face something more terrible than life and death. Captain, there is no value here anymore. Do you want to stay here to prepare for the upcoming short-range missiles, or come with me to the Security Council? After collecting the body left by Arnim Zora, Johnny asked Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers was still in the strange method displayed by Johnny. When he heard about the process missiles mentioned by Johnny, his face changed slightly. He looked around and prepared to find a weak point to break through. Chief Johnny, I've heard of you and I'd like to have a chat with you, but now, we should consider working together to find a weak spot to break through, Steve Rogers said. Don't bother, let's go. Don't resist. Johnny smiled slightly, and the power of space permeated, wrapping Steve Rogers' body. Under the other's surprised eyes, the two had disappeared in this secret underground space. Boom. A missile fell rapidly, and just after Johnny and Steve Rogers left, the entire ancient military base was completely destroyed and turned into ruins. A moment later, a large number of agents in SHIELD uniforms airborne and began to conduct a carpet search. The transmission process was only a moment, and Steve Rogers only felt that the light and shadow in front of him slowed down, and when he couldn't see clearly, time and space had been left behind. In the faint, he heard a huge explosion coming from the space behind him. However, this huge explosion could only cause a slight shock to the transmission of time and space, which could be completely ignored. When the scene in front of him was seen clearly again, Steve Lowell explained that he and Johnny were already in a base of the Security Council. Where is this? There was still surprise in Steve's eyes. Although he knew that Johnny's methods were unpredictable, it felt quite strange for the first time to experience it personally. The base of the World Security Council. It's very safe here. Whether it's SHIELD or Hydra, they dare not reach out to me, Johnny said with a faint and confident smile on his face. Hydra? The words that Johnny said made Steve Rogers' face change slightly. For him, a person abandoned by time, the atrocities of Hydra were just like yesterday. Who do you think sent someone to assassinate Fury? Although the character of the One-Eyed Dragon is not very good, you should not believe that Fury will really sell confidential information for profit. Johnny smiled faintly, took the kiwi juice handed to him respectfully by an agent, and handed a cup to Steve Rogers. Mr. Johnny, can you tell me more about it? Steve Rogers had been sizing up Johnny since he saw him. However, the more he interacted with him, the more he felt that the mysterious veil on Johnny was so heavy that he could not see through him at all. "Sit down and talk slowly, Steve." Johnny gestured slightly, and after Steve Rogers sat down, he picked out some general plots and told Steve. "Thank you, Mr. Johnny. You and the other person both made me feel familiar and made me feel like I was back in the past." After a simple chat, Steve Rogers felt much more relaxed, and the tense expression on his face gradually eased. "However, I have a question, which is really a bit presumptuous. I feel a certain energy from you, and this energy will make me connect you with Hydra." After not feeling any malice from Johnny, Steve Rogers also relaxed a lot and raised the doubts that were weighing on his heart. Hearing Steve's words, Johnny smiled slightly, and the spatial power on his body was released and then retracted. "Is that it?" Johnny asked. Yes, Steve Rogers had been in constant conflict with Hydra, and had come into close contact with the cosmic cube. That was why he connected Johnny's energy fluctuations with Hydra. This is not the power controlled by Hydra, and this power is not something that ordinary people can control. But in the future, you will have the opportunity to slowly understand. What lies before you now is how to solve the problems of SHIELD. After the civil strife, SHIELD is no longer SHIELD. As for the root cause of the civil strife, you still need to find it yourself. Johnny smiled. He helped Rogers purely for interest, and as for what happened afterwards, it had little to do with him. Chapter 160. I understand, Mr. Johnny. I am very grateful that you can help me so much and tell me these things. I also know that the World Security Council does not interfere in the internal affairs of various countries. I will solve this matter independently. After resolving his doubts, Steve spoke gratefully, and did not have any dissatisfaction because Johnny said he would not take action. "Steve, sometimes, you can't do it alone. I suggest you find a trustworthy friend. Maybe it will make it easier for you to act," Johnny said casually, and then arranged for the Security Council agent to lead Steve away. "Captain, if you need any help, you can contact me at any time." Before Steve left, Johnny waved his hand and a communication bead shot towards Steve Rogers, much faster than a conventional armor-piercing bullet. However, Johnny did not intend to attack. The communication bead cut through the space, and all the momentum disappeared out of thin air. The communication bead also floated steadily in front of Steve Rogers. After a slight nod, Steve Rogers disappeared in front of Johnny. "Director, you saved Steve Rogers. Why don't you take this opportunity to let him join the Security Council?" After Steve was sent away by the staff, Medusa walked slowly to Johnny and asked with some doubts. Based on her understanding of Johnny, Johnny always values talents and should not miss such an opportunity. "I don't know why he saved him this time, but didn't say a word about letting him join the Security Council." "Medusa, it's not that I don't want to subdue him, but Steve Rogers is not a person of this era. When he finishes the things left over from the last century, he will naturally make a choice." Johnny smiled slightly, having completely understood Steve Rogers' psychology. In the Second World War of the last century, Steve Rogers and Hydra had a deep wish, and his sleep was also closely related to Hydra. These things needed to be settled by Steve himself. "Any new information?" Johnny smiled faintly and reached out his hand. Medusa's charming body had already slumped against his chest. He casually opened the communication bead and contacted Natasha. "Director, there is a lot of news that is now being confirmed. Do you want to listen first?" Natasha's holographic projection spoke, and her voice came clearly. "Tell me about it. I'm free anyway." As he spoke, Johnny's big hand had already wandered over Medusa's body, not paying any attention to Natasha's eyes with a strange smile in the holographic projection. "Director, you are really free. Then I will report to you. Our people went deep into S.H.I.E.L.D. to investigate and tracked several of Nick Fury's most trusted agents. We found an extremely secret base of S.H.I.E.L.D. Through the top special personnel we sent to infiltrate, we found a dead man in it." Natasha smiled slightly and said, "Nick Fury." Seeing the indifferent expression on Johnny's face, Natasha did not continue to keep him in suspense, and could only speak with a little frustration. "This old guy is also a person with a long lifespan, and he usually uses a lot of strange things on his body. It would be strange if he was really assassinated." Johnny looked at Natasha's face and explained. Natasha had to admit that Johnny had a deep understanding of the truth of things. By the way, Director, through some confidential information of S.H.I.E.L.D., we compared the photo of the assassin who assassinated Nick Fury and found that this was also a dead person. You can't guess it. This time, Natasha looked very sure, and even if Johnny was a god, he couldn't make a guess out of thin air. Natasha, what if I guessed it? Johnny raised his eyebrows slightly, and his handsome face was even more mysterious and evil, giving people a strange feeling that was unfathomable. I don't believe it. Natasha was also a little woman in front of Johnny, with her sexy red lips slightly pouted. No matter what she said, she would never believe that Johnny would guess it. Well, if I guessed wrong, I'll ask you to make a condition, but if I guessed right, you and Medusa will come to accompany me today. Johnny smiled, and the faces of Medusa and Natasha's holographic projection in his arms blushed. The two women knew that Johnny's fighting power was very fierce. Okay, but Natasha finally agreed. The assassin of Nick Fury should also be a dead man. His name is Bucky Barnes. In the files of S.H.I.E.L.D., there should be another name. Winter Soldier, right? Johnny's smile widened, while Natasha looked surprised. Her red lips slightly opened. Obviously, Johnny's words were beyond her expectations. Natasha, the director is really right, right? Medusa, who leaned on Johnny's arms and let Johnny take advantage of her, looked at Natasha's expression and was a little surprised. She couldn't help but ask, Natasha, I'll wait for you to come. Johnny smiled slightly, not giving Natasha the opportunity to continue to be stunned, and had already given an order to cut off the communication. Needless to say, a fierce battle for love is about to begin. After helping Steve Rogers once, Johnny did not put too much thought on the affairs of S.H.I.E.L.D., and the chaos within S.H.I.E.L.D. had attracted the attention and intervention of the U.S. government, and things became more confusing. Like the original plot, Steve Rogers found his friend, Sam Wilson, known as the Falcon, and the two cooperated to directly kidnap a senior official of S.H.I.E.L.D., and this official was actually Hydra's undercover who had been lurking in S.H.I.E.L.D. for many years. From this person, Steve Rogers got more information, but because of this, he was strongly sniped by Hydra and started a fierce battle on the intercity highway. It was in this battle that Steve Rogers met the assassin who made him inexplicably familiar again. In the fierce fight, he finally tore off the mask on the other party's face and saw the other party's true face clearly. Bucky Barnes, Steve Rogers' companion who grew up with him and his best brother. The appearance of Bucky made Steve confused, and the other party obviously didn't know him at all. His attacks were fatal, which almost put Steve Rogers in a desperate situation. The fierce battle lasted until a large number of S.H.I.E.L.D. fighters and agents appeared, and Bucky Barnes had to leave, and Steve had to surrender. Like the original plot, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who took Steve away included many Hydra members, who were ready to secretly execute Steve halfway. But when the other party opened the car door, Steve had been quietly taken away by Fury's confidant. Damn it. Report quickly, the mission failed. Steve escaped. The responsible Hydra member had an ugly face and cursed viciously. Chapter 161, Insight into the Conspiracy of the Plan. Steve and Falcon, who were secretly taken away by S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, met Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., who was covered in scars and weak in a very secret S.H.I.E.L.D. base. Nick Fury, who deceived everyone by faking his death, confessed everything to Steve. He deliberately faked his death just to paralyze the enemy. It seems that Mr. Johnny is right. You are really an old fox. Seeing Nick Fury's miraculous resurrection from the dead, Steve was naturally happy and couldn't help but teasing him. Johnny, does he know? Have you seen him? Nick Fury, with a sallow face, was slightly stunned. He didn't expect that the other party could guess his fake death. Nick Fury always kept a distance from Johnny and had no contact with him for many years. He didn't expect that the other party still knew everything about him. Captain, since he already knows about me, I think you might be able to ask him to help. After getting Johnny's news, Nick Fury's mind has become active. Steve Rogers alone is not enough to handle everything, but if Johnny is really willing to help, he can rest assured. Mr. Johnny won't do anything. This is not the scope of the Security Council to intervene. Besides, I can handle it. Steve had already had an idea and directly rejected Fury's proposal. After that, Fury and others exchanged intelligence, allowing Steve to basically grasp the situation in S.H.I.E.L.D. and understand the main purpose of Hydra's conspiracy. Insight: Hydra has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. for many years, and undercover scientists like Arnim Zola have been guiding Hydra, allowing Hydra to master a lot of cutting-edge technology, so they came up with the idea of Insight. If Hydra mastered the Insight plan, through the deduction program developed by Zola, it can predict all the existences that will threaten Hydra in the future, and use S.H.I.E.L.D.'s 3 aircraft carriers in deep space to directly carry out long-range intercontinental strikes. The aircraft carrier developed by S.H.I.E.L.D. for many years is equipped with powerful firepower. Once the target is locked, it can almost kill with 100% certainty. Only a strong person like Johnny can ignore the sniping of top technology. But how many people like Johnny are there? We must find a way to stop this, otherwise, the whole world will become a toy of Hydra. Steve's face was solemn and his eyes were determined. It's not enough to deal with 1 or 2 of the 3 aircraft carriers. We must deal with all of them to be able to deal with it. The top power currently displayed by the opponent includes the elite agents who have been undercover in S.H.I.E.L.D. for many years, as well as the Winter Soldier. At this point, Nick Fury no longer hid it. Captain, how confident are you in Falcon that you can deal with the 3 aircraft carriers within a quarter of an hour when the 3 aircraft carriers take off? Nick Fury asked realistically. Steve frowned, and after weighing it, he felt that he was not very confident. His body was transformed into a super soldier during World War II, and it was indeed much better than that of an ordinary person. However, Steve was always at a disadvantage in several battles with his former good brother, Bucky Barnes. This made him realize that in a real battle, although he might eventually defeat Bucky, he definitely did not have enough time to deal with 3 aircraft carriers. I need to leave for a while. Steve did not dare to be careless when it came to the lives of millions of people. The only helper he could think of was Johnny. Captain, where are you going? Seeing Steve was about to leave in a hurry, Nick Fury asked. World Security Council. Steve's voice sounded, and he left without looking back. In the Security Council base, an agent appeared in front of Johnny's office and knocked on the door with a respectful look. Director, Steve Rogers is here, and he wants to see you. Hearing his subordinate's words, Johnny showed a strange smile on his face. No need to bring him to see me. Let him go directly to Dr. Samuel and arrange for the intermediate super soldier enhancement. I believe that with his physical fitness, he will have no problem with the intermediate super soldier enhancement. There was no need to meet Steve Rogers in person. Johnny had already guessed his thoughts and made arrangements for it. Yes. The responsible staff saluted respectfully and left quickly. Although Steve did not meet Johnny, he got the help he wanted as he wished. The intermediate super soldier enhancement is an advanced version of the super soldier enhancement that Steve carried out during World War II. After being improved by many top scientific research talents in the Security Council and adding other top biotechnologies, it has reached a very top level, which is far beyond the enhancement of Steve's era. After a painful transformation process, Steve's body has undergone earth-shaking changes. Both his strength and vitality have evolved by leaps and bounds. When he walked out of the enhancement room, the pressure emanating from his whole body made the responsible staff feel slightly depressed. Such a powerful force. I never thought that human power could reach such a level. Steve kept stretching his body, which was familiar with his soaring strength, with surprise in his eyes. After completing the intermediate super soldier enhancement, his confidence was greatly boosted. When facing his former good brother Bucky Barnes again, he was confident that he could easily crush him without hurting his life. Can I meet with Director Johnny? I want to thank him in person. Before leaving, Steve once again proposed to meet with Johnny in person. Captain, there is no need to bother so much. The director said that after you finish your work, the door of the Security Council will be opened for you, and you can see him at any time. The staff smiled and declined Steve's request. After a slight nod, Steve left with confidence and returned directly to the secret base of S.H.I.E.L.D. where Nick Fury was recuperating to make final preparations for the final battle. After the internal turmoil at S.H.I.E.L.D., The top brass of the US government all sensed something unusual, and they attached even more importance to the Insight project that S.H.I.E.L.D. had been researching for many years. They once again proposed a plan and were ready to implement it in the near future to improve the security level as soon as possible. All of this was exactly what Hydra wanted, which was equivalent to getting an official government pass to launch the Insight project in a big way. As long as the 3 aircraft carriers were launched, all the enemies of Hydra would become dead souls. Captain, everything is up to you. Whether the future human society will be in chaos or order is all in your hands. Chapter 162, SHIELD Civil War. Director, the stage is ready. The transmission beat and Johnny's hand vibrated, and Natasha's gentle voice sounded. Just send the picture over. Johnny nodded slightly. The war between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, the Security Council quietly integrated in a short period of time, and had already investigated all the movements of both parties clearly. It can be said that everything is under control. Through the real-time picture in front of Johnny, everything in the Triskelion headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. can be clearly monitored, and even the monitoring of the Triskelion headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. can be directly used to monitor everything in all directions without blind spots. At this time, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Insight plan has been fully launched and reached the final step, only waiting for the specified time. As in the original plot, Hydra went deep into the highest level of S.H.I.E.L.D. As the permanent director of the Security Council of the U.S. government, Pierce showed his foxtail under Steve's exposure, and finally showed his cards, ready to go all out, not hesitating to expose the whereabouts of all Hydra infiltrators, just to make the Insight plan go smoothly. After being strengthened by the intermediate super soldier, Steve Rogers' strength was almost enough to crush the Winter Soldier. After making the Hydra conspiracy public, Steve, along with many cooperating S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, began to compete for the 3 aircraft carriers of the Insight project. Director, it has been confirmed that Pierce, a permanent member of the U.S. Security Council, is the top person in charge of Hydra's operation this time. Should we take action against him? Medusa and others were all present, constantly receiving a large amount of information, and all the important information was summarized in Johnny's ears. Don't worry, if Hydra can't send out other senior members by the time this good show ends, then bring Pierce to me, and Bucky Barnes. They should have a lot of useful information. Hydra has been dormant for so many years and it's rare for them to show up. We can't let them slip away again. Johnny plans to spread a big net for Hydra and make sure to catch them all. Otherwise, with the nature of Hydra, if you cut off one head, 2 will pop up. He doesn't have so much time to slowly cut off these boring heads. In Johnny's impression, there are at least more than 3 Hydra forces left in the world that are developing secretly. After decades of development, they have almost cut off contact with each other and become extremely secretive. Among the Hydra, the one with the greatest ambition and the strongest energy should be Baron Skrat's faction. It should be this faction that secretly controlled Morgan Biotechnology and had conflicts with him. It's just that I don't know whether the Hydra force that Pierce belongs to is the Hydra controlled by Baron Skrat. Under the attention of the crowd, Steve and Falcon cooperated tacitly, mobilized many S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who were loyal to the country and S.H.I.E.L.D. to fight against the Hydran undercover in S.H.I.E.L.D., and quickly controlled 2 aircraft carriers that had just taken off. On the 3rd aircraft carrier, Steve encountered trouble and once again faced his former good brother and comrade. Originally, Steve completed the intermediate super soldier enhancement, and his strength was much stronger than the Winter Soldier. However, this brotherhood that lasted for more than a century made him hesitate under the desperate attack of the Winter Soldier. If he wanted, he could burst out all his strength, defeat or even kill Bucky Barnes, but he couldn't do it. Captain, there is less than a minute left. You must manually insert the chip that controls the aircraft carrier into the console. Otherwise, even if an aircraft carrier is in the hands of Hydra, the whole world will be over. Falcon rushed left and right, attracting a large number of Hydra agents' dense firepower, and shouted anxiously at Steve. Falcon's voice made Steve's eyes move, and a touch of determination flashed across his eyes. In Steve's hand, a unique communication bead of the Security Council appeared. This communication bead was handed to him by Johnny himself, so that he could ask for help when he needed it. Now, He activated the communication bead for his good brother, Johnny, who was far away in a base of the Security Council, had a clear grasp of Steve's every move. Seeing Steve activate the communication bead in his hand also vibrated. "Captain, what's the matter?" After the communication was connected, Johnny asked with interest. Johnny was also a little confused about the purpose of Steve's request for help. "Mr. Johnny, I have a request. After completely ending the conspiracy of Hydra, I am willing to join the Security Council, but I want to ask you to help someone." Steve's voice was slightly breathless, and he continued to resist the fierce attack of the Winter Soldier. Lieutenant Colonel Bucky Barnes is loyal to his country and a national hero. He has been controlled by Hydra for many years. "I will negotiate with the U.S. government on this matter. I believe they will give me this face. Moreover, the rehabilitation technology of the Security Council is also good. It should be able to erase Hydra's mental control over Lieutenant Colonel Bucky." At this point, Johnny is so smart that he knows what Steve is thinking without Steve saying anything. Johnny is not a hesitant person for Steve's straightforward agreement to join the Security Council. It is easy for him to keep a mere Bucky. After getting Johnny's guarantee, Steve, who was fighting with Bucky Barnes, showed a huge surprise on his face. He didn't expect Johnny to do this. With a firm look in his eyes, his attack became resolute. In order to avoid too much unnecessary entanglement, Steve's strength, which reached the level of an intermediate super soldier, was fully erupted. He directly attacked with a heavy hand. In just a dozen seconds, he completely crushed Bucky. Even Bucky's special metal arm after being modified could not withstand Steve's fierce outburst. Bucky Barnes, who was completely brainwashed and controlled by Hydra, showed obvious horror on his cold and ruthless face. He never thought that Steve's strength would make such a huge and substantial leap in just a few days. In the midst of a violent attack, Steve finally seized the opportunity, moved his hand, and slashed Bucky's neck with a palm. After being hit hard, Bucky's fierce eyes were dimmed, and his body slid softly. Steve gently caught him and put him on the ground. Steve looked at Bucky with complicated eyes and full of emotion, and then resolutely left. In the violent vibration of the aircraft carrier, the last aircraft carrier was soon safely controlled. This also marked that this plan that Hydra had planned for many years and spent countless efforts on was completely bankrupt. The good show was over. In the Security Council base, Johnny's voice was flat, and his body slowly stood up. The invisible momentum spread out, making everyone smile a little. The director was in the mood and was ready to go on stage. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163. Raise your hands to destroy the aircraft carrier. After nodding slightly to everyone, Johnny's figure moved and disappeared in the base of the board of directors. When he appeared again, Johnny had quietly arrived at the most confidential Triskel Line headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D., and had a clear view of the chaos unfolding on the ground from the sky. At this time, there were gun battles and strong flames everywhere on the ground. The fierce battle between S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and Hydra's undercover agents had reached a fever pitch. Among the 3 S.H.I.E.L.D. special aircraft carriers that took off in the air, 2 had obviously controlled their altitude and did not continue to rise. Only the altitude of the 3rd aircraft carrier continued to rise, and it seemed that Steve did not completely control it. Trying to control uncontrollable power. This is the result. Johnny sighed slightly, watching the aircraft carrier that was constantly taking off suddenly fly towards the position where he was suspended in the air, and a gleam of brilliance flashed in his eyes. A mighty force rose from Johnny's body. Under this surging force of destruction, Johnny quickly mobilized the cosmic energy from space. The terrifying giant hand condensed, but in a blink of an eye, it had already fallen from the sky and covered the rapidly rising huge aircraft carrier. "What is that?" "Look," Johnny called on the towering hand condensed by the majestic cosmic energy, casting an extremely huge shadow, blocking most of the sunlight on the entire sky. People on the ground also noticed that the vision suddenly darkened, Many people looked up at the sky and their bodies stiffened, looking at the giant hand like a god on the sky. Everyone felt a strong sense of suffocation. Such a terrifying giant hand. The aircraft carrier was just a small thing in front of it. If the giant hand carried the power of mountains and seas to slap them down, it would probably be no different from slapping a fly to death. Whether it was the lurking undercover of Hydra or the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, they all stopped fighting for a while, bearing this terrible pressure that was almost like the might of heaven. Under the gaze of countless eyes, the towering energy hand slapped down and bombarded an aircraft carrier that was rising continuously. This attack was exquisitely controlled by Johnny. Although it was powerful, it did not completely destroy the aircraft carrier, but only curbed the rise of the aircraft carrier. Inside the aircraft carrier, the terrifying vibration had already made Steve's face change drastically. When he saw Johnny floating in the sky through the transparent armor outside the aircraft carrier, his eyes were obviously surprised. "Steve, take Bucky away. Things here are over," Johnny spoke calmly. His voice was not loud, but it was clearly transmitted directly to Steve's ears through the solid armor of the aircraft carrier. Steve did not question Johnny's words. After nodding slightly, he picked up the still unconscious Bucky Barnes, grabbed a relatively intact parachute, and jumped directly from the air. Boom! After Steve and Bucky Barnes jumped off the aircraft carrier, Johnny did not hold back. The huge aircraft carrier exploded directly under the sudden grasp of the towering energy hand. The huge steel shell could not withstand the unparalleled force, and it exploded and twisted, becoming a huge scrap of iron burning with strong flames, cutting through the air and falling violently from the sky. After destroying the uncontrolled aircraft carrier, the towering energy hand did not stop there. Following Johnny's gaze, the huge energy palm slapped violently, like hitting a fly, and slapped the other two aircraft carriers directly from the sky. The huge aircraft carrier fragments, carrying blazing flames, fell from the sky in large chunks and fell on the Triskelion headquarters building of S.H.I.E.L.D., causing even more violent chaos. At this time, both S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and Hydra's hidden members had already understood that the destruction of the 3 aircraft carriers of the Insight Project had already come to an end. Moreover, after suppressing the panic in their hearts, some people recognized the existence of the giant hand floating in the sky, which created energy and destroyed the 3 aircraft carriers. "That's Johnny, the director of the World Security Council." "Oh my God, it's him? Since the Security Council has taken action, you Hydra betrayers, you are dead." After recognizing Johnny's identity, many S.H.I.E.L.D. agents looked fanatical, screamed wildly, and launched a counterattack against the Hydra lurkers who were losing momentum. On the other hand, the Hydran undercovers who had been lurking in S.H.I.E.L.D. for many years, although they were well armed and had a large number of people, the appearance of Johnny had a huge impact on their morale, almost shrouding everyone's hearts with a thick haze, and they didn't have much fighting spirit. By the time the 3 aircraft carriers fell, the Hydran undercovers had already realized that they were doomed. "Pierce has been controlled. We must evacuate. Long live Hydra." Retreat. Faced with the increasingly fierce counterattack of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, the Hydran undercovers were finally completely defeated and began to flee on their own. Unfortunately, just when the Hydra agents and others pulled out of the battle circle and thought they had escaped the crisis, they were confronted with elite agents of the Security Council who had been strengthened by super soldiers. Facing the elite agents of the Security Council who had been strengthened by super soldiers, these Hydran undercovers truly saw what despair was. Any soldier of the Security Council who had been strengthened by super soldiers showed strength that was no weaker than Captain America, who had revived after sleeping for 70 years. Equipped with the powerful weapons of the Council, the counterattack of the Hydra lurkers seemed so powerless in front of them. After dealing with the 3 S.H.I.E.L.D. warships equipped with powerful weapons in the sky, Johnny did not continue to attack. For him, it was really hard to arouse any interest in these ordinary Hydras. He just watched coldly, watching all the Hydras either being controlled or becoming cold corpses. "Director, Pierce has been controlled. He has a strong desire to survive. He doesn't have the idea of committing suicide when other Hydras can't defeat him." A message came from Johnny's communication bead, which made Johnny smile a little. "Suicide? There are not many brave people who can get to the top of Hydra. Hand Pierce over to Emma. I want to know everything he knows. As for Pierce's life or death, it doesn't matter. Johnny smiled slightly and made a decision. So far, this conspiracy that Hydra has been planning for many years has come to an end. However, the complete exposure of the inside plan and the destruction of 3 aircraft carriers by Johnny, the director of the Security Council, at a critical moment have caused great turmoil among the top leaders of the United States. The Security Council, full name of the World External Security Council, usually does not interfere in the affairs of various countries. However, this time, if Hydra controls the 3 aircraft carriers of S.H.I.E.L.D., it will be an alternative global disaster, and even affect the heads of state, politicians and future technology giants of all countries in the world. The impact will definitely be quite serious. Director, the President of the United States sent a telegram to express gratitude to the Security Council for its timely action to resolve the crisis, and hopes to invite you to the state banquet. One day after the inside plan was shattered, a message was delivered to Johnny. Chapter 164 Nanny. Johnny knew that the U.S. government wanted to see his attitude when inviting him, because he had finally intervened in this incident. Medusa, you can just go there for me. As for the U.S. government, just watch and deal with it. Johnny thought for a while and spoke calmly. In this incident, many S.H.I.E.L.D. agents performed well, especially their attitude in the face of crisis, which I admire a little. Before Medusa left, Johnny smiled and said, Director, I understand. Having followed Johnny for many years, Medusa was already familiar with Johnny's personality. For many things, Johnny only needed to give her some simple pointers and she would be able to fully understand them. After Medusa left, Emma's special service team soon received news. Director, Pierce has been completely brainwashed and controlled. He has confessed everything. Unfortunately, it's bad news. The Hydra that Pierce belongs to is not the Hydra part controlled by Baronsclant. There has been no much contact between the 2 parts for many years. Through Pierce, we can hardly dig up information related to other Hydras. Emma's holographic image moved her red lips slightly, passing on the news that Johnny had been paying attention to. Hearing Emma's words, Johnny sighed slightly, but was not too disappointed. In this case, Pierce is not of much use. It's better to sell a favor to the U.S. government. After digging out almost all the information about Pierce and the first series of Hydra, these people can be handed over to the U.S. government. Johnny nodded slightly and said, By the way, how is the situation with Steve and Bucky Barnes? Since there was no way to uproot Hydra through Pierce, Johnny didn't bother about it, and his focus fell on Steve and the Winter Soldier. After the captain brought Lieutenant Colonel Bucky Barnes back to the base, our personnel treated them. The captain is now healthy and is waiting for your summons. There are a lot of residual mind control drugs and various experimental drugs in Bucky Barnes' body, and it will take some time to completely remove them. Emma spoke slowly. In the Security Council, besides Medusa who is in charge of all affairs and Natasha who is in charge of the intelligence department, she has the most power. Everyone knows that Emma is Director Johnny's woman, and Johnny doesn't need to personally assign any position. Everyone will be respectful to Emma. Let Bucky Barnes get good treatment and let him recover as soon as possible. In addition, you can let the captain come to see me. Johnny thought for a while and said to Emma, Yes. Soon, Steve Rogers appeared in front of Johnny. Captain, how do you feel? Johnny smiled kindly and motioned Steve to sit down. Director Johnny, I've said that when the Hydra issue is resolved, I will choose to join the Security Council. I hope you can agree. This time, Steve stood in front of Johnny, and his attitude had changed subtly. Originally, after sleeping for decades, Steve woke up and found that he could no longer see his contemporaries in the world, which made him feel lonely and stayed in S.H.I.E.L.D. temporarily. The rebellion in S.H.I.E.L.D. made Steve feel discouraged and couldn't find the purpose and meaning of his existence. However, after going through everything, Johnny gave him powerful strength and helped him find his childhood companions, which made Steve's mentality change subtly. He had an indescribable sense of closeness to Johnny and was very awed by him. Steve, you are a rare talent. Of course, I won't refuse, but I need to remind you that the World External Security Council may face a powerful threat from outside the Earth in the future. The other party has a terrible energy that is difficult to match. Will you be afraid? Johnny glanced at Steve lightly, waiting for his answer. Yes, but I won't run away. From Johnny's words, Steve felt the strong pressure of a desire. He clenched the shield in his hand and spoke resolutely. Very good, Steve. There will be a place for you in the future Security Council. If you need anything, you can directly ask. Johnny was satisfied with Steve's answer. As long as it is a living thing, it is difficult to avoid the emotion of fear. Even when he was weak and had just crossed into this world, facing the hateful guards of the god's domain, he would also feel fear of their irresistible power. However, Johnny finally turned fear into desire and the power to move forward, and came to this point today. Fear itself is not terrible. Acknowledging fear, facing fear, and fighting fear are truly valuable. After settling Steve, Johnny waited for the news from Medusa from the U.S. government. After a brief discussion, the U.S. government expressed gratitude to the Security Council, but there was a potential sense of crisis. It was afraid that the most advanced confidential organization like S.H.I.E.L.D. was infiltrated and riddled with holes, and hoped to get the views and suggestions of the Security Council. Finally, Medusa proposed that from now on, S.H.I.E.L.D. would be allowed to continue to exist, and all its actions would remain normal without any restrictions. The only difference was that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s various actions needed to be supervised by the Security Council. In return, some of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s outstanding agents would become permanent members of the Security Council and serve the Security Council. When the U.S. government was worried that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s mess would be difficult to deal with, Medusa made such a proposal, which was naturally what they wanted. In this way, although some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who had spent huge resources to train would be lost, fortunately, there was the Security Council to supervise, and Johnny, the great god, was there to keep them safe. No matter what problems occurred, the government could rest assured. Medusa, your way of handling the situation is a little bit soft. This way, the U.S. government is happy. They have found a powerful ninny and thug. In the future, there will probably be a lot of things that will all be tilted to S.H.I.E.L.D. If S.H.I.E.L.D. can't handle it well, we will be the ones to clean up the mess. Johnny smiled helplessly after receiving the news from Medusa, but he didn't have too many emotional fluctuations. Since he showed his strength, the U.S. government has always stood on his side. Whether it is policy or resource allocation, it has given Johnny considerable convenience. Occasionally, they let him take advantage. Johnny is not the kind of petty person. Now S.H.I.E.L.D. is a force under the Security Council. We will help them clean up the mess of S.H.I.E.L.D. You should be able to handle these things. After that, retrieve a list of excellent S.H.I.E.L.D. agents for me. In the end, Johnny made a decision and accepted the deal. Chapter 165 Taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Fury, I don't need to introduce myself, do I? In the base, Johnny met the one-eyed black man Nick Fury. Nick Fury looked a little depressed at this time, and he still had many injuries that had not been fully recovered. The most important thing should be the psychological blow. The shield that he had devoted most of his life to build almost collapsed overnight. For him, the blow was quite heavy. Johnny, Director. Nick Fury's one eye looked at Johnny for a long time before he slowly spoke. Director Fury, don't look at me like an enemy. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. is supervised by the Security Council, I don't have much interest in controlling you. Everything that S.H.I.E.L.D. has done before remains normal. I will not interfere. Even the most confidential research in several special prisons, I will not ask about it. However, S.H.I.E.L.D. has many excellent agents. It would be a pity to bury them. Let them stay in the Security Council in the future. Nick Fury is a smart man, and Johnny also speaks frankly. I don't care about what you did before, but I will poach some of the excellent agents. Nick Fury could only sigh slightly at Johnny's words. In the current situation, being able to allow S.H.I.E.L.D. to continue to exist is already the best result. With his energy, he can't expect a better solution. Director Fury, don't worry, these agents will be promoted much more after entering the Security Directorate than if they stayed in S.H.I.E.L.D. Johnny smiled. In this way, many excellent agents in S.H.I.E.L.D. were directly transferred to the Security Directorate. When the super soldier transformation was carried out, Johnny also went to the scene in person, looking around and seeing everyone in his eyes. Phil Coulson, with outstanding communication skills, was one of the few excellent negotiation experts in S.H.I.E.L.D. Maria Hill, Melinda May, and Barbara Morse are all hot beauties with different temperaments. Standing together, they form a unique landscape. Phil Coulson, Maria Hill, Level 5 agents, members of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Special Task Force, solved many emergency incidents. Melinda May, Level 5 agent, calm and composed, strong individual combat power, once dealt with dozens of terrorists alone. Barbara Morse. Johnny's eyes swept over the agents. He had read everyone's files and told them all, everyone doesn't have to be so restrained. The Security Council is a big family. There are not so many rules like S.H.I.E.L.D. After you join the Security Council, you will soon become the backbone of the council. Johnny did not hesitate to praise him, and his words made everyone feel like spring breeze. Originally, they thought that the mysterious director would be very serious, and they were a little nervous in their hearts, but after seeing Johnny's warm attitude, they all relaxed. After a simple conversation, everyone also had a certain understanding of Johnny. In addition to respect, the eyes looking at Johnny also had admiration. What Johnny didn't know was that in addition to the Security Council's own powerful power, which attracted many elites to join, his own powerful strength was a legend admired by countless agents. This was the key reason why most people were willing to join the Security Council. You are all excellent. This time, the super soldier strengthened and selected you. It is an affirmation and praise for your performance. Moreover, I can tell you that since I appeared in front of you, you have become the core force in the middle level of the Security Council. Johnny's words made everyone excited and they all spoke up to express their loyalty. Everyone understood the significance of the middle level of the Security Council. For a long time, the top leaders of the Security Council were only Peggy, Natasha, and Howard. As they became the core force of the middle level, their rights and status in the Security Council were naturally self-evident. The Security Council has been vigorously researching super soldiers since the end of World War II. By now, combined with various items and technologies, it has long been mature. After going through a painful test, when more than a dozen Security Council agents walked out of the strengthening room, their aura had changed dramatically. Take them to get familiar with their new bodies and strength. After they are done, they can be assigned regular tasks. The probation period is about 3 months. For these senior agents recruited from S.H.I.E.L.D., after being strengthened as super soldiers, they can directly perform tasks without too much training, and their loyalty will be evaluated objectively by the Special Task Force led by Emma. After solving the problem of super soldiers, Johnny did not leave immediately, but reviewed a lot of the achievements of the Security Council's Scientific Research Department in recent years. What made Johnny happy was that after the last guidance to Bolivar, the research and development of the Sentinel robot had made a breakthrough. At this time, the Sentinel robot can be classified as a second-generation Sentinel robot. Mystique confused mutant genes that change cell structure. After Bolivar's research, she has been trying to act on the Sentinel robot. At this time, the Sentinel robot has been able to undergo a huge change compared to the first-generation robot that can only master one mutant ability alone. On the second-generation Sentinel robot model made by Bolivar, Johnny saw 2 different energy attack forms, ice and fire. Although the attacks of these 2 energy forms are not as powerful as the full explosion of the Iceman and the Fireman, they are already a great improvement. Director, after overcoming the technical difficulties of integrating different mutant abilities into one robot, the combat effectiveness of the Sentinel robot has greatly increased. At present, it can integrate up to 3 different mutant abilities. As long as I have enough time, it is not a big problem to create an ultimate Sentinel robot that controls various mutant abilities. Bolivar demonstrated the capabilities of the second-generation Sentinel robot and spoke confidently. Well done, Bolivar. You have made an indelible contribution to the Sentinel robot's achievement. Although the current Sentinel robot can barely be put into actual combat, it is a pity that it is still lacking in intelligence. In this regard, you can cooperate with others. Johnny nodded and casually mentioned it, which made Bolivar's eyes shine. He was busy studying the X gene and ignored the intelligence of the Sentinel robot in actual combat. After Johnny's reminder, he suddenly understood. Even if you have strong strength, if your intelligence cannot keep up, It will be difficult to achieve good results even if you put it into actual combat. Director: I understand, don't worry, I will follow your instructions and develop a powerful Sentinel robot. Bolivar nodded seriously. Also, the Sentinel robot does not necessarily rely on mutant abilities. After obtaining Wakanda's technology, you can also consider adding vibranium technology and nanomolecular technology to the Sentinel robot. The shape of this robot does not necessarily have to maintain a human form. It can be a beast, a mechanical form, or even a pool of water. With Johnny's guidance, Bolivar's eyes became brighter and brighter, and he nodded repeatedly. For these ideas proposed by Johnny, he already had a desire to try them immediately. Seeing this, Johnny did not say much and went to other areas of the scientific research department to see the results of other aspects. Chapter 166, God's Realm Figure. Just as Johnny and Bolivar were talking about the Sentinel project, a truck was speeding across a wasteland somewhere in the United States. There were 3 people in the truck: Eric Serbia, Mary Jane, and their assistant Daisy Louise. After Eric Serbia was invited by the Security Council's Scientific Research Department to join the Security Council, Mary Jane, a university professor who worked with Eric Serbia, was also eager to join the Security Council. However, Mary Jane's research results were not enough for her to be invited by the Security Council. For this reason, this trip to the wasteland was made. Just as the vehicle was speeding, a magnificent scene appeared in the dark sky, with countless shining lines interweaving and outlining a strange and complex pattern in the clouds. Is this the wonderful aurora you mentioned? Eric Selvig was confused. According to his knowledge, no aurora would ever appear in such a state. Drive quickly, let's get closer. Mary Jane was also slightly stunned, and then reacted. The truck roared as it sped towards the cloud layer where the mysterious flashing pattern appeared. The light in the cloud layer became brighter and brighter, and the powerful energy fluctuations stirred the heavy cloud layer, forming a strange tornado. If it wasn't for the fact that it was not clearly visible in the dark, this scene would be quite spectacular. Oh my God, I don't think this is the aurora. Eric saw this scene with a horrified expression on his face, and he was already thinking in his heart that this matter was special and he must report it to the Security Council as soon as possible. Bang! Before everyone could get close to the turbulent cloud layer, the truck hit a human figure that suddenly appeared, and the 3 people screamed in shock. The person they hit was none other than the exiled Thor Odinson. Just as the 3 got off the car and were eager to check on the situation of Thor Odinson who was hit, Thor's hammer Mjolnir also penetrated through the cloud layer and fell in a wasteland a few kilometers away. Eric Selvig quickly reported this unusual incident to the Security Council. Huge energy fluctuations, magic circles in the sky. In Johnny's office, pictures appeared one after another. These pictures were all recorded by the equipment on Selvig's truck. When Johnny saw the magic circle in the sky, he recognized that it was formed when the Rainbow Bridge of the Divine Realm connected to another world. Director, we retrieved all the satellite images of that area at that time, but the display on the satellite images is very blurry, as if it was blocked by some kind of energy interference. Please look at this picture again. This is a photo searched on the internet. The location recorded in the photo is just a few kilometers away from the area reported by Selvig. The picture in front of Johnny changed. It was a wasteland in the picture, and in the wasteland, there was a huge meteorite crater, radiating dozens of meters in radius. However, what fell into this meteorite crater was not a meteorite from outer space, but a hammer. Surrounding the meteorite crater, there were many civilians, who were obviously attracted by this strange vision. The Security Council attaches great importance to this matter. Coulson has taken Hawkeye, Barton and Bronsky to block it. They should be here soon, Medusa said when she saw the smile on Johnny's face. The artifact Mjolnir. It seems that the story of Thor has begun. Johnny had some guesses in his mind, and after seeing the hammer, he was even more certain. Everyone, are you interested in going to take a look first? Johnny smiled faintly, and Medusa, Natasha and Steve in the office all showed interested expressions. The space portal opened, and Johnny led a few people to walk in one after another. When they appeared again, They had arrived in front of the meteor crater where the incident occurred. The number of civilians around the meteorite crater was much larger than that shown in the picture. Many people used iron chains to wrap around the hammer in the meteorite crater, and were driving to pull it away. A group of people were following and making a fuss. Many people came to join in the fun, bringing food and drinks, and put up parasols around the meteorite crater, taking pictures and enjoying the food. The car with the iron chain wrapped around the hammer was powerful. With a roar, the car started and the iron chain quickly jumped straight. "Hey, come on, buddy, I'm rooting for you. Try harder." Seeing this scene, many civilians who were watching the excitement shouted and kept cheering. Boom, boom. The driver of the motorcycle heard the crowds booing and stepped on the accelerator. The power of the car was increased to the maximum, making the iron chain creak. Bang! With a sound of braking under the heavy load, the car rushed forward. If the driver hadn't braked in time, it would have hit a protruding rock. Ha ha ha. Jabba, you have to accept the loss. Give me the money. Not only the bet money, but also the money for this iron chain. What on earth is that thing in the pit? The car can't even pull it. It must be something good. If we can take it away, we can definitely sell it for a good price. Seeing the iron chain break, the crowd talked a lot and looked at the hammer in the crater with different expressions. Director, what on earth is this? It looks a bit like a hammer. This thing is so heavy that even a car can't pull it. It's at least 10 tons. Medusa and the others also saw this scene and were very surprised. Johnny smiled faintly. Not to mention that a truck couldn't pull it. I'm afraid that with the current technology on Earth, it would be impossible to shake Mjolnir. Steve, are you interested? Johnny's eyes moved, and he saw that Steve beside him was rubbing his hands. After completing the intermediate super soldier enhancement, Steve's strength leaped. In terms of strength alone, it was more than 10 times that of before. It was easy for him to punch out several tons of force. Nodding, Steve walked towards the crater. Boy, what are you going to do? Do you think you can move this thing? In the crowd, there were a few big men who had been defeated. When they saw Steve walking in front of the hammer, they couldn't help but say. Steve nodded. These ordinary people didn't know his strength, but he was very confident in himself. In his opinion, a hammer is just a certain size. No matter how heavy it is, it definitely cannot reach 20 tons. And the force he exerted with all his strength is definitely more than 20 tons. How do you know if you don't try? Steve seemed very confident. After moving around casually, he placed his hands on Thor's hammer and began to exert force slowly. Infected by Steve's confidence, many viewers who thought that Steve could not move Thor's hammer began to waver in their positions. This kid looks very confident. Can he really move this thing? I've asked my eldest cousin to drive a crane over here. Don't let this kid move it. Chapter 167, Strength to pull mountains and invincibility to overcome the world. Under the gaze of the crowd, Steve increased his strength bit by bit, and the meridians on his arm bulged. Time passed by little, and the faces of countless people who were watching this scene became exciting. The captain's desire to perform is a bit strong. He hasn't used real kung fu for a long time. Natasha and Natasha have completed the intermediate super soldier enhancement and have some understanding of their own strength. Seeing that Steve didn't pull up the hammer for a long time, they thought he did it deliberately and wanted to show off in front of people. Johnny smiled slightly and didn't say anything. In fact, is this really the case? In addition to Johnny, only Steve, the person involved, understands how evil this hammer is. Just as he showed, Steve has now shown all his strength without reservation. His face is slightly flushed, his arm muscles are completely bulging, and his meridians are protruding, but Thor's hammer has not moved at all. How is it possible? This is what Steve thought at this time. Under the attention of everyone, Steve is embarrassed to give up like this. With a loud shout, Steve raised his strength to the limit. His arms, which were already swollen with blood, swelled up again. All the terrifying power was integrated into his arms, and he pulled out suddenly. With Steve's shout, his momentum completely exploded, and his strength was also raised to the limit. Under the extreme state, the ground under Steve's feet could not withstand such a strong reaction force, and cracked one after another. With Steve's feet as the center, the ground showed spiderweb-like cracks, and large pieces of rock collapsed. With a boom, everyone felt the ground under their feet tremble slightly, and their faces showed extremely surprised expressions. Did he pull it out? Feeling the vibration of the ground, everyone's eyes fell on Steve. At this moment, Steve's face was red, his feet were all sunk into the shattered ground, up to his knees, and his chest rose and fell sharply. Failed. Peggy and Natasha saw this scene and looked at each other, with obvious astonishment on their faces. The solid ground couldn't withstand Steve's explosive power, causing his feet to sink deeply, and he still couldn't pull out the hammer. After a short moment of astonishment, the crowd burst into exclamations. Even the few strong men who had just looked down on Steve did not dare to look down on him at this moment. Although Steve did not pull up the hammer in the end, the terrifying power he showed had made everyone dare not speak carelessly. Discouraged, Steve let go of his hand, moved his body, pulled out his feet that were deeply stuck in the rock, and walked back to Johnny. "Captain, what's going on?" Natasha couldn't help but ask the doubts in her heart. "This thing is too heavy. Even with my full strength, I can only shake it slightly. It's impossible to pull it up." Steve was not a person who wanted to save face. He told the truth, and there was a hint of shock in his eyes when he looked at Thor's hammer. "If there is anyone on Earth who can shake this hammer, I can't think of anyone else who can do it except the director." Steve's eyes quickly fell on Johnny, and Medusa and Natasha also reacted, with expectations on their faces. Johnny has now become an absolute giant in everyone's mind, in everyone's eyes. There is nothing Johnny can't accomplish. "Okay, then I'll give it a try." Johnny smiled slightly, and he didn't mean to be polite. Johnny wanted to know how powerful the artifact made of the core of a dying planet was. After Steve tried it, everyone's eyes fell on Steve and Johnny. Seeing Johnny walk out and walk towards Thor's hammer, many people's eyes became interested. Several big men surrounding Thor's hammer saw Johnny coming over. After a little surprise, they laughed at each other. "Boy, do you think you are the same as that little him just now, with your body? I think you should take it easy." A big man laughed, not really looking down on Johnny, but thinking that Steve's powerful strength couldn't shake the hammer, and Johnny would have the same result. "Brother, I advise you that only professional machines can move this thing. Don't try to hurt yourself." The other person spoke more politely, but he also didn't think Johnny could pull out Thor's hammer. "Since I'm here, I'm just trying." Johnny didn't care about these ordinary people. He stood in front of Thor's hammer and put one hand on the handle of the hammer. "Really? This young man only uses one hand? Haha, I think he is here to embarrass himself. He wants to lift something that even cars can't pull with one hand. I'll eat the hammer." Seeing Johnny's actions, many people whispered to each other, and almost no one thought Johnny could pull out the hammer. But soon, everyone's eyes changed. The moment Johnny grabbed the handle of Thor's hammer, the hammer vibrated. "Feeling my power?" Resisting instinctively, Johnny smiled slightly after feeling the vibration in his hand. Mjolnir didn't care about other people's touch and pulling. That was because other people were no threat to Mjolnir. But Johnny was different. Ordinary people could not feel the surging energy in Johnny's body, but Mjolnir could. Artifacts are actually the product of combining technology and magic. When Johnny touched Thor's hammer, the artifact began to vibrate. This was an instinctive resistance. It was like an anti-theft lock. If it was not controlled by the owner of the artifact would naturally riot. However, in front of Johnny, could a mere artifact resist his power? Johnny smiled faintly. His palm had already tightly grasped Thor's hammer, without any sign of effort, and the incomparable power had already acted on the hammer handle. Johnny did not use any ability at first. He wanted to try to see if he could lift the artifact with his physical strength alone. The overwhelming force surged from Johnny's hands, and the vibration of Thor's hammer became more and more violent, resisting this force. At this moment, Mjolnir showed the power of the artifact, and the thunder power in the hammer surged, causing a considerable vision. In the sky, a large number of dark clouds gathered out of thin air, covering the sky above the artifact, making the light gradually dim. What happened? Is it caused by the young man? Is it because the hammer angered the gods? "Young man, let go. Don't touch this thing." Everyone felt a heavy and oppressive breath emanating from Mjolnir, and some people couldn't help but speak loudly, wanting Johnny to stop. Chapter 168 The Unconvinced Meow Hammer. Steve and the other two were also surprised. They didn't expect that Johnny's pulling of the hammer would cause such a huge change. However, the three were different from the crowd around them. They knew that Johnny was very powerful and didn't worry much. As the power in Mjolnir was passively activated, Johnny's palms flashed with dazzling electric light, trying his best to resist Johnny's control. These electric lights flowed between his palms, making Johnny's hands feel a little numb. However, the energy that burst out from the artifact only made Johnny feel numb, and it was difficult to cause any damage to his strong physique. For this disobedient artifact, Johnny snorted lightly, and the violent power burst out from his palms holding Thor's hammer tightly. After contacting the terrible power spreading in Johnny's palm, the electric energy surging from the artifact began to collapse rapidly, and it was simply unable to compete with Johnny's unparalleled power. The invisible force, following Johnny's will, destroyed the thunder power surging from Mjolnir and quickly spread to the entire hammer, completely enveloping it. After being enveloped by this terrifying energy, the strange phenomenon in the sky quickly dissipated, and the invisible pressure from the artifact's might also completely disappeared. Everyone present felt the pressure on their bodies lighten, and their eyes showed puzzled expressions. What happened? What happened just now? I felt an invisible force, pressing me to the point of suffocation. How come it suddenly disappeared? Just as everyone was puzzled, Johnny shouted softly, and the artifact Mjolnir had been firmly grasped by him and suddenly pulled up. Seeing this horrifying scene, there was a sound of cold air in the field. Even a truck couldn't pull the hammer, but it was pulled by a young man, and, just waving it casually. Steve's eyes were a little surprised. Although he knew that Johnny was strong, in his opinion, it would take some effort to pull out this extremely heavy hammer, even with Johnny's strength. But now, Johnny had a calm face, and there was no expression of effort on his face. Steve keenly discovered that there was no sign of cracking on the ground under Johnny's feet. In other words, all the power of this hammer was borne by Johnny with his body, without leaking out, and even the ground under his feet was not affected at all. Johnny held Thor's hammer in his hand and swung it casually a few times. The huge weight satisfied him, but this artifact never belonged to him. In his hands, there was nothing special except that it was a heavy weapon. Not bad, but unfortunately, I can't exert the power of this hammer in my hands. Johnny sighed secretly, but his thoughts became active. It must be said that this artifact from the dwarves is still very powerful. Johnny was thinking that if he had the opportunity in the future, he must go to the dwarves to forge an artifact that he wanted. By the way, there is also Searcher's Twilight Sword. I don't know if it is worth collecting. If it doesn't obey, the dwarves will melt it. Holding Mjolnir, Johnny quickly thought of another artifact in his storage space. Twilight Sword, a trophy taken from Searcher, the Lord of the Fire World. This artifact, like Mjolnir, was also beyond Johnny's control. This gave Johnny the idea of creating a special artifact for himself. After waving Thor's hammer around, Johnny gently put the hammer back to its original place under everyone's shocked gaze. In his perception, in the distant sky, the Security Council spacecraft driven by Coulson and his party was rapidly approaching. This little, young man, is so strong. He's simply a monster. He can lift something that weighs at least dozens of tons easily and wave it around. I can't believe it. By the way, I remember you said just now that if he pulls it up, you will eat the hammer? Everyone was talking in horror, looking at Johnny with amazement in their eyes. Just as everyone was talking, a huge wind pressure appeared above their heads. A huge spacecraft with a strange shape slowly lifted its invisibility, revealing its powerful true face. On the spaceship, there is a huge Security Council logo, which is somewhat similar to the Security Council. The Security Council emblem is the eagle shield, while the Security Council's is the sword shield, which symbolizes not only defense, but also fierce attack. Don't be nervous, we are agents of the World United External Security Council. A special incident has occurred here, please evacuate in an orderly manner. Coulson's voice came from the loudspeaker of the spaceship, and everyone's face changed. World United External Security Council? Isn't this the Security Council? I know this. Admiral Johnny, the director of the Security Council, is a legend in our United States. He saved the world back then. Yeah, I wonder if such a hero will be on a spaceship. If I can see him, I can brag about it for a year. Don't think too much. For such a small matter, will Director Johnny personally come forward? The crowd began to pack up their things while discussing. Since the official intervened in this matter, they naturally would not stay any longer. However, what no one knew was that Director Johnny, who was discussed and admired by everyone, was standing in front of them. "Director, you are really famous. Even ordinary people know you," Medusa said with a sweet smile. If they knew that the one who just picked up the hammer was the director of the Security Council, they would be shocked. Natasha also laughed at the crowd's discussion. The crowd dispersed quickly. The Security Council spaceship slowly stopped not far from the crater. Coulson and his party also walked out of the spaceship. Seeing the few people still standing around the crater, they were all stunned. "Director," when they recognized Johnny, they were all stunned, and then they quickly reacted and hurried forward to salute. "Director, why are you here?" Seeing Johnny here, Coulson and others were a little surprised and uneasy. After receiving the intelligence, Coulson and others immediately came here, but now that Johnny, the director, has appeared here, they have just arrived. If Johnny thinks they are inefficient, I'm afraid. "Coulson, Barton, Bronsky, don't be so polite, we just arrived." Seeing that Coulson was a little nervous, Johnny smiled amiably without any intention of blaming him. "I'll leave it to you here. As for this hammer, just keep a close watch on it. You don't need to take it away." After feeling the power of Mjolnir, Johnny was also satisfied. He said hello to Coulson and left quickly with Natasha and others. Chapter 169 Loki Invasion. Coulson, Barton and others were a little confused about Johnny's instructions. According to the routine handling method of the Security Council, special items of this kind must be strictly handled and all brought back to the Security Council. However, this doubt did not last long. Barton accidentally tried and got the same result as Steve. After that, this hammer made Coulson and others pay attention to it. "It shouldn't be. I just saw someone waving a hammer on the spaceship. Why can't it be moved now?" When evacuating the crowd, I heard someone say that the hammer was picked up by a young man, and there was a beautiful woman next to the young man. The agents led by Coulson were also talking about this strange hammer. After hearing the words of his agents, Coulson and others knew who the person who picked up the hammer was without thinking. "Okay, don't talk nonsense. According to the director's instructions, we will build a temporary base here and move the instruments on the spaceship down." Coulson quickly made arrangements. A large number of detection equipment and testing instruments and other materials were moved down from the station, and a temporary base was built in just a few hours. While Coulson and others were building the base, the news of the hammer-shaped meteorite landing on Earth was spreading like wildfire in the surrounding towns. Especially the audience who witnessed Johnny grabbing the hammer that even a truck couldn't pull and dancing it freely in his hand, were even more exaggerated, almost boasting that Johnny was omnipotent. And this news soon reached Thor Odinson, who had just been exiled to Earth and had a car accident. Thor, who got the news, was surprised and excited, but also a little confused. According to the description of these people when chatting, the meteorite was undoubtedly his weapon Mjolnir. But isn't it nonsense to say that someone on Earth can pick up his Meow Meow hammer? This artifact, let alone Earthlings, even Thor's brother Loki, the god of conspiracy, who is also a prince of the god realm, can't shake it at all, let alone the weak Earthlings. But Thor's nerves have always been big, and he didn't dwell on this issue for too long. He quickly went to the place where his Meow Meow hammer fell according to the news he had inquired. Over the wilderness, night gradually fell. Thick clouds accumulated in the sky, the air was very humid, and a rainstorm was about to come. "Sir, after instrument detection, the unidentified object has a strong magnetic field interference. Our equipment is special and can remain normal, but the flights passing through this area will definitely be affected." A staff member stood in front of the screen and reported to Coulson, "In order to avoid accidents, adjust the routes of all flights passing through this sky." After receiving the report, Coulson was a little surprised. It seems that this hammer-shaped object that made the director come in person is not just heavy. Wait, sir, the monitoring shows that there is an outsider approaching outside the western fence. On the screen, among the large number of monitoring images, one image suddenly gave a warning, and the staff member hurriedly reminded Coulson. The monitoring screen was enlarged, and Coulson quickly saw the appearance of the figure. Arrange 2 people to go over and take a look. Coulson quickly gave an order. Even if Thor lost his divine power, it was not something that 2 ordinary agents could handle. After 1 or 2 rounds, the 2 had collapsed to the ground and fainted. And all of this was seen by Coulson. Relax your guard and let him in. I want to see what this person's purpose is. Hawkeye stood beside Coulson with a serious face. After seeing Thor's skills, his eyes showed a strong interest. Coulson himself had completed the primary super soldier serum fusion and had strong combat power. Even if he faced Thor, who had no divine power, alone, it would not be a problem at all. Moreover, in this temporary base, there were 2 agents who had completed the intermediate super soldier serum fusion, Hawkeye Barton and Abomination Bronski. With the presence of several people, this base was even more impregnable. Coulson was not worried about any problems. Under Coulson's orders, the agents in charge of guarding the temporary base deliberately relaxed their vigilance and let Thor sneak in. Sir, he entered from the southern passage. He is moving eastward. He is making a detour and trying to approach the central area. Thor's every move was clearly captured by the special monitoring equipment of the Security Council, and it was difficult for him to escape tracking. Unfortunately, he was still complacent, thinking that he was so powerful that the Earthlings could not find him at all. Soon, under Coulson's deliberate arrangement, Thor passed through the layers of blockades and came to the front of Thor's hammer. Looking at his weapon, Thor's face showed a smile of reunion after a long absence. Coulson, should we take action? Barton asked. Wait, I want to see. Looking at the smile on Thor's face, Coulson spoke. The intruder had a clear goal and was obviously here for the hammer. He was also very curious about the connection between the hammer and the intruder. However, the result disappointed Coulson. The Meow hammer, which was sealed by Odin, did not even recognize Thor as its owner. After a struggle, Thor raised his head and howled, and knelt in front of the hammer. Seeing this, Coulson waved his hand to signal his agents to arrest the emotionally collapsed Thor. In the room where Thor was imprisoned, Coulson interrogated Thor, but did not get any information. As in the original plot, after Coulson left, the energy of magic fluctuated, and the figure of Loki, the god of conspiracy, appeared in the room. Everything that happened before was seen by Loki. In order to make Thor more depressed, Loki fabricated the news of the death of Odin, the father of the gods, which made Thor even more heartbroken. Coulson, wait, something interesting happened. Just after Coulson left, he received a message from Hawkeye Barton. Through the detection device of the Security Council, Coulson and others clearly found another figure in the room where Thor was imprisoned. This person has a strong energy fluctuation, and he is definitely not a civilian. Under the detection equipment of the Security Council, Loki thought he was perfectly hidden and had no place to hide. With the energy fluctuations on his body, ordinary agents are no match for him. Let us deal with this person. Hawkeye Barton shook the weapon in his hand, and with a click, a vibranium longbow popped out. Bronski, let's go. Hawkeye smiled slightly and quickly took Bronski to the place where Loki appeared. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170 Intermediate Super Soldier Enhancement vs. God of Conspiracy. Loki thought that no Earthlings could find him. He was blocked by Barton and Bronski just as he was about to leave. Interesting, Earthlings can actually find my existence. Surrounded by the two, Loki showed a gloomy smile on his face. From Barton and Bronski, Loki felt a faint sense of crisis. No matter who you are, I advise you to surrender obediently, otherwise, I don't mind letting you see how angry I am. Bronski, who had already regained his human form, had a dangerous light flashing in his eyes. Since completing the fusion of the intermediate super soldier serum and rapidly improving his combat power, Bronski has not fought to his heart's content. Now facing Loki, he was faintly excited. Loki responded to Barton and Bronski's request for him to surrender with action. Loki, who was originally dressed in casual earth clothes, slowly faded away with the fluctuation of his breath. After the flash of magic light, Loki had restored his original dress. He was wearing a golden armor, a strange helmet with two curved corners on his head, and holding the eternal spear, the artifact that originally belonged to Odin. A stream of energy gathered at the top of the Spear of Eternity. As Loki swung it violently, the violent golden energy immediately shot towards Bronski. When Barton and Bronski saw Loki remove his disguise, they became alert. Facing the attack from the Spear of Eternity, Bronski roared and his body strength exploded, dodging the attack. A powerful energy shock shot past Bronski, causing a huge explosion. Seeing this, Bronski no longer hesitated. With a roar, his body underwent a huge change. Bronski, who was less than 2 meters tall, suddenly grew in size. Fierce bone spurs protruded from the spine and various joints of the body. The ribs on his chest turned outward, forming a bone armor to protect his torso. Roar! Bronski roared loudly. The excitement and bloodthirstiness in his eyes were clearly visible, and the violent momentum rose, far exceeding the time when he fought the Hulk in New York. As Loki's face changed slightly, Bronski grinned, and his huge body suddenly moved, turning into a phantom, and shot towards Loki. Loki was a little troubled by the sudden change of the body and the violent aura of the abomination. Moreover, there was another person here whose fighting power was no less than that of the abomination. After completing the intermediate super soldier enhancement, the speed of the abomination was greatly improved. After rushing, it almost came to Loki in an instant, making Loki's plan to attack again fail. Facing the sharp grab of the abomination, Loki had to block the attack with the Spear of Eternity. Bang! The overwhelming power came, and before Loki could react, his body was pressed down by the huge force of the abomination, and he almost knelt on the ground. At this moment, Loki's eyes were full of shock and disbelief. As a person from the god realm, although he was not good at strength, in his mind, the weak humans on the earth should never have such power. Without giving Loki a chance to react, an arrow had already shot towards his back. Feeling the energy fluctuations on Loki, Barton shot an arrow without hesitation. The bow and arrow made by Zengen technology were shot with the powerful force of Barton after being strengthened. The power was extremely amazing, which made Loki feel a huge threat. In the face of the huge threat, Loki's energy burst out, and the Spear of Eternity burst out with a surging energy shock, radiating in all directions. This was Loki's full strength burst. Although he could not stimulate the power of the artifact, the Spear of Eternity, but with the amplification of the artifact, the power was also considerable. The explosion formed by the huge energy shock forced the abomination back, and Barton's arrow also deviated in direction and barely passed by Loki. Boom! The explosion sounded, and smoke and dust rose into the sky. At the location where the three fought, all the buildings were destroyed. The battlefield was not far from the room where Thor was imprisoned. Under this sudden explosion, the room where Thor was located was also affected and destroyed. Feeling the familiar fluctuation of divine power, Thor, who fell to the ground due to the shock, got up and saw Loki surrounded by the abomination and Buggy. He couldn't help but be stunned. His brother, the god of conspiracy, Loki, was not like himself now. Without any divine power, Thor knew that Loki, who had divine power, was still very powerful. However, at this time, Loki's chest rose and fell violently, and his eyes were full of vigilance. The energy explosion just now consumed a lot of his strength. On the other hand, Barton and Bronski were a little embarrassed when they exploded, but they did not suffer any damage. Ants in the atrium, you have angered the gods. Loki's figure was full of coldness and viciousness. The eternal spear slammed heavily on the ground, and chaotic energy spread out, and light and shadow filled the air in an instant. Under the gaze of everyone, Loki's figure turned into 2, and 2 turned into 4. In a blink of an eye, the whole space was filled with Loki's figure, making different moves and rushing towards Bronski and Barton respectively. Facing this strange magic for the first time, Hawkeye and Abomination were a little surprised. With a roar from the Abomination, its sharp claws danced into phantoms, and rushed towards the large number of Lokis who were rushing towards it. Under the extreme power, all the phantoms of Lokis who were rushing towards it were torn to pieces. Hawkeye Barton's reaction was a bit strange. Seeing Lokis being torn apart by the Abomination and then turning into light and shadow and dissipating, Hawkeye already understood that these differentiated Lokis were all illusions. Facing the attack of countless Lokis, he actually slowly closed his eyes. The reason why Barton was called Hawkeye was naturally unique. As a sharpshooter, his perception was very sharp, and he could capture the enemy's position through any subtle links and launch an attack. A sharpshooter does not have to use his naked eyes to lock on the enemy, and all 5 senses can become a means of capturing the enemy's position. After closing his eyes, Barton magnified his other senses to the maximum. Without the interference of vision, he could capture the enemy's position more clearly. Countless phantoms of Loki rushed over, each extremely hideous, and attacked Barton, but Barton stood in place, without any movement, allowing all the phantoms to penetrate his body. The vibranium longbow shook, and an arrow magically appeared on the longbow. Barton immediately drew the bow and shot it. The tip of the arrow flashed with a red light, and it shot towards the empty space. Boom! The arrow hit the air and exploded in an instant. Along with the explosion, a figure was thrown into the air in a panic, and the phantoms in the sky disappeared in an instant. The figure that was thrown into the air was Loki, who was hiding in the dark and preparing to use the phantom to create an opportunity to launch a fatal attack. He didn't react until the vibranium explosive arrow exploded in front of him. How could an ordinary human see through his magic? This is absolutely impossible. Chapter 171 Go to Heaven. Loki groaned after falling heavily to the ground. The facts before him had awakened him. No matter how this human did it, he was in danger now. The Abomination was very angry at the illusions created by Loki. Now seeing all the illusions disappear, he immediately rushed towards Loki, who fell to the ground. With every step he took, the ground was trembling faintly, making Loki's face show fear. "Take me away," Loki shouted, making Barton and the Abomination stunned. While the two were stunned, a sudden strong light descended from the sky and landed on Loki. The strong light was filled with terrible power, blocking the steps of the Abomination. When the strong light disappeared, only a circle of complex circular patterns remained on the ground, but Loki's figure had disappeared. Bronski and Barton looked at each other, looked around, and after confirming that Loki had disappeared, Bronski's body slowly shrank and returned to human form. "Damn it, I don't know what kind of power this guy used. He actually slipped away from under our noses." Barton and Bronski were a little frustrated that Loki escaped. With their combined strength, they could have completely crushed Loki, but in the end, he still let him escape. However, compared to Bronski and Barton, Thor, who witnessed this battle, was a little horrified. Although Loki's strength was not as good as his, he was also a first-class fighter in the god's domain. He didn't expect that he would be defeated by two earthlings with a divine weapon in his hand. If it weren't for the Rainbow Bridge to lead him, he would probably become a prisoner like him. Not only Thor, but Loki was also shocked and depressed. When did such a powerful existence appear among the weak ants in the atrium? If I hadn't reacted in time and called the Rainbow Bridge, I'm afraid I can't come back now. Loki's figure was a little embarrassed, and he appeared in the teleportation portal of the Rainbow Bridge, with a trace of fear on his face. "You dared to attack the greatest ruler of the 9 realms, you ants of Midgard. You will soon face the wrath of God." But now, Loki's face turned gloomy after being furious and fearful, and his eyes flashed with conspiracy. In the current god's realm, Thor's power was sealed by Odin and he was exiled to the earth. Odin fell into Odin's sleep, and it was a question whether he could wake up. After Odin fell into Odin's sleep, Loki had already seized Odin's eternal spear, which was not only a divine weapon, but also a symbol of Asgard's supreme authority. Not long after returning to the god's realm, Loki left again and entered Jotunheim. This time, he did not pass through the Rainbow Bridge, but avoided Heldrim's sight. No one knew what he said to Laufey, the lord of the frost giants in Jotunheim. Johnny did not pay much attention to the affairs of the gods' realm after leaving. At present, the scientific research department of SHIELD was preparing for another big thing. Director, according to Reed's request, our spacecraft can meet the requirements of entering space with a simple adjustment. It has been charged and can take off at any time. Johnny received a report from the agent that all the preparations for Reed's research project have been completed. What do you think about Reed's research project? Johnny asked the several scientific research department leaders standing in front of him. Director, Reed's research is very pioneering. We have also seriously simulated and studied the impact of cosmic storms on mutants that you mentioned before. For this space project, we have also specially designed 2 Sentinel robots to follow them to the space station. Samuel also made a device that can extract the energy of cosmic storms. It should be able to collect enough cosmic storms for our research. By letting the Sentinel robots contact the physical signs of cosmic storms and the collected cosmic storm energy, I believe there will be a lot of results. Everyone in the scientific research department was very interested in Reed's research project. After Johnny proposed the idea, they made a lot of preparations. That's good. How long will it take before the spacecraft takes off? Johnny asked. According to Reed's calculations, the cosmic storm should arrive at the designated space station in 2 weeks. Before the spacecraft enters space, we have already done a lot of preparations. If we take off, it will take less than 4 hours to reach the space station, but Reed is already a little impatient. Speaking of this matter, several people smiled. Reed's talent has been recognized and appreciated by them during this period of time. He has been regarded and cultivated as an outstanding junior. By the way, Director, Reed brought 3 assistants, all of whom are scientific researchers. Although there is nothing wrong with their backgrounds, they are not members of the Security Council after all. When mentioning the other 3 assistants brought by Reed, Johnny smiled slightly. Reed had told him about this matter before, which was harmless. Don't worry, he told me about this matter. It's just a few assistants. When they come back from space, we can send an invitation. Johnny smiled. He didn't care much about these little things. After being irradiated by the cosmic storm, the Fantastic Four was officially formed. Johnny must control these powerful fighting forces in his own hands. If nothing unexpected happens, there will be a slight deviation in Reed's calculation of the time of the cosmic storm. It is this slight deviation that prevents them from opening the defense barrier of the space station in time, and they are directly irradiated by the cosmic storm, becoming the future Fantastic Four. Before the spaceship took off, Johnny personally came to meet Reed and his 3 assistants. Susan, who looks charming and has a hot body, Susan's brother Johnny, and the big guy Ben Grimm. These 3 people are the famous Invisible Woman, the Human Torch, and the Thing in the future. Director, Reed was very excited to see Johnny. If it weren't for Johnny, he would probably still be immersed in depression because he had no funds and could only miss the cosmic storm. Seeing Johnny, Susan and others were a little embarrassed. They had already heard Reed mention Johnny's things. They were curious and awed to see a legendary figure like Johnny. Reed, since you have already chosen the right assistants and partners, the Security Council will not make any more arrangements. However, no one knows whether there will be any dangers in the cosmic storm. After you enter the space station, you must pay more attention to safety. Johnny glanced at Susan and the others, and smiled and reminded them. After a brief exchange, they quickly entered the spacecraft and began to warm up and charge. A quarter of an hour later, the preparations were completed. A huge burst of energy erupted from the bottom of the spacecraft, and it took off directly from the Security Council's Air Headquarters base, speeding up and soon disappearing from everyone's sight. Looking at the sky, Johnny's thoughts drifted away. Chapter 172 God's Domain Destroyer. With Johnny's current strength, he already has the strength to leave the Earth and venture into the universe. However, there are still many things that the Security Council and the Earth have not completed. The plot of Thor has already begun. According to Johnny's impression, the alien Chitauri army will soon land in New York. If he does not strengthen his power before that, he will suffer heavy losses in the face of invasions from other civilizations. And later, There are the Dark Elves who attempt to dominate the universe, and Thanos who comes with the Infinity Gauntlet. Although he can deal with these invaders, he cannot stay on the Earth for a lifetime, so it is necessary to let his subordinates grow and strengthen their power. Little Tony, Barton, Thor, Bruce Banner. It's about time to put the Avengers plan on the agenda. Johnny thought to himself, Director, the spacecraft has entered the scheduled orbit as planned, and is expected to arrive at the space station in 3 hours and 46 minutes. Hearing the staff's report, Johnny smiled and retracted his thoughts. Keep an eye on the status of the space station. If there is any special situation, notify me in time, Johnny ordered and left immediately. After leaving the scientific research department, Johnny went to another important base of the Security Council and got a general understanding of the development of the base in all aspects. Director, the special service team led by the Red Devil here has discovered a special mine. In the deepest part of the ocean, the metal extracted from the ore has a strong flame fluctuation. Whether it is used to make weapons or as a simple energy source, it is a very good resource. In front of Johnny, the White Queen Emma, who has been in charge of this base, is reporting the results of the ocean base in recent times. After listening to Emma's brief introduction, Johnny was very satisfied. Today, the deep ocean has been basically controlled by the Security Council, with the special service team composed of mutants. Large and small resource deposits in the ocean have been developed one after another. Seeing the satisfied expression on Johnny's face, Emma smiled and secretly felt fortunate for her choice. Not bad, come over now. Johnny nodded, leaned on the sofa, and said to Emma. Seeing this, Emma blushed, then slowly walked to Johnny and began to serve gently. While Johnny was enjoying it, drastic changes were taking place in Asgard, the top of the 9 realms, which was infinitely far away from the Earth. As in the original plot, after Loki returned to the gods' realm from Jotunheim, Heimdall, the god of dawn, had already noticed Loki's conspiracy, but due to his oath of loyalty to the Lord of the Gods' realm, he could not take action against Loki, and could only hope for Thor, who was exiled by Odin. Therefore, Heimdall contacted Sif and Thor's 3 good friends, and regardless of Loki's orders, opened the Rainbow Bridge and sent the 4 people out of the Gods' realm, hoping that the 4 people could find Thor. Only when Thor can return to the Gods' realm and regain his divine power can he stop the conspiracy that is about to happen. This time, 4 people were teleported in succession, and the Rainbow Bridge had great energy. When it connected the Gods' realm and the Earth, it was captured by the Security Council. Sir, we have detected an unknown huge energy, 15 kilometers northwest of the temporary base of Chief Coulson and his team. The Security Council's monitoring department had already captured the abnormal fluctuations in space when Sif and others landed on Earth. The temporary base established by Coulson was very close to the teleportation site, and also detected abnormally huge energy. While reporting this news, he drove to the scene with Barton and Bronski. According to the map markings, there is a small town less than 1 kilometer away from the area where the energy fluctuations are severe. We must be quick. If there is a threat, we must ensure the safety of all civilians in the town. The special service car of the Security Council sped across the wilderness. Coulson looked at the map information displayed in his hand and communicated with Barton and Bronski with some concern. Coulson, your worry is a bit unnecessary. Barton and I are here. Even if there is a threat, we can handle it. Bronski spoke with confidence. Although Barton did not speak, he also had a bit of confidence. Both of them are the top fighters in the Security Council. Their combat awareness is excellent. In addition, they have completed the fusion of super soldier serum. It is not a big problem to solve the conventional threats. When Coulson and others drove to the area of energy fluctuations, Sif and Thor's 3 friends had entered the town according to the instructions of Heimdall, the god of dawn, and found Thor, who was having lunch with Jane Foster and the other 2. When friends meet, they can't avoid some greetings, but after some exchanges, Thor was a little confused. So, my father is not dead? Everything Loki said is a lie? Anger slowly emerged in Thor's eyes. Once again, he was played around by his brother, the god of conspiracy. At this time, Loki was furious because of the betrayal of the gatekeeper Heimdall. Originally, Everything was going according to his plan, deceiving Thor, making him feel guilty, exiling himself to the earth for life, and never returning to Asgard. Laufey, the lord of the frost trolls, is just a stepping stone for Loki to consolidate his rule. When Laufey sneaks into the realm of the gods with the frost trolls, Loki will kill Laufey in public to consolidate his position. But now, this plan has been disrupted by Heimdall. Once Sif and Thor's three good friends come to Earth and tell Thor everything, Thor will definitely not let him go after he regains his divine power and returns to Asgard. At that time, all his plans will be shattered. This is something Loki will never allow to happen. In the underground treasury of Asgard, in front of a strange wall, the eternal spear in Loki's hand slammed heavily on the ground, and strange energy suddenly emanated. On this wall, originally covered by dense strange metals, all the strange metals disappeared as the strange energy fluctuated, and a human figure emerged from it. This is the guard sealed by Odin in the underground treasury, the Destroyer. Strictly speaking, the Destroyer is a special weapon, which is as powerful as a divine weapon. It was forged by Odin himself and endowed with magical secrets to guard the underground treasury. All enemies who sneak into the underground treasury without permission will be turned into ashes under the wrath of the Destroyer. I want you to descend to the courtyard and make sure that my brother and his companions cannot come back. Destroy all obstacles. Chapter 173 The Revenge of the God of Conspiracy. Facing the tall Destroyer, Loki's eyes flashed with a fierce look, and he gave the Destroyer an order. Originally, Loki could not drive the Destroyer at all, but the eternal spear in his hand could, as long as he controlled this artifact that symbolized the highest authority of the god's domain. He would be the king of the god's domain, and if he wanted to send the Destroyer to Earth and get rid of Thor and the others, there was another problem. That was Heimdall, the god of dawn, who was guarding the Rainbow Bridge. Loki looked at the Frost Clan artifact, the icebox, placed on a platform deep in the underground treasure house, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. With the power of the artifact, Loki froze Heimdall at the head of the Rainbow Bridge and turned him into an ice sculpture, and the Destroyer also successfully landed on Earth through the Rainbow Bridge. After Coulson and others detected the huge energy fluctuations, they drove there quickly, but before they arrived at the scene, the change happened again. Just on the edge of the town not far from where Coulson and others were driving, thick dark clouds formed in the sky, and a flash of light broke through the sky and shone on the ground. Boom! The dull explosion echoed far away in the wilderness, and the whole town could hear it. Go! That town! Coulson and others changed their faces, and the car adjusted its direction, reaching the maximum speed, and sped towards the location of the town. The one who caused such a big commotion was the Destroyer who came to the Earth from the god's realm with Loki's order. Thor, Sif and others were in the town, and they were all startled when they heard the huge explosion. The Destroyer's huge body exuded a strong destructive momentum and came towards the town quickly. Feeling this huge destructive momentum, Thor and others changed their faces and quickly responded, evacuating all the panicked people in the town. Sif and Thor's three friends held their weapons tightly and went to stop the Destroyer. Just like the original plot, the power of the Destroyer was far beyond what Sif and others could deal with. After a few rounds of fighting, everyone had been beaten by the Destroyer without any resistance. Thor knew the purpose of the Destroyer, and at the critical moment, he resolutely stepped forward and wanted to influence his brother. But the result was, the Destroyer's punch full of destructive power made Thor bleed all over, and he fell to the ground after drawing a parabola. Just when Thor was on the verge of death, the Destroyer, under the control of Loki, was about to attack others and destroy everything. Roar! A huge roar attracted everyone's attention. The abomination Bronski had transformed into a huge monster that was no less than the Destroyer, and rushed towards the Destroyer. At the critical moment, Coulson and others finally arrived. All of this was clearly seen by Loki, who was controlling the Destroyer. It can be said that enemies are particularly jealous when they meet. Barton and Bronski almost put Loki in a desperate situation before. Now that he has controlled the powerful power of the Destroyer, Loki's face showed a hideous look. In his opinion, Sif and others can be put aside for the time being. Anyway, they can't make much waves. However, Barton and Bronski, who made him feel ashamed, must die. Destroyer, kill them. Loki roared in the faraway god's domain, and the spear of eternity in his hand slammed heavily on the ground. The destroyer received Loki's order, and the metal armor on his face opened layer by layer, and the blazing energy gathered, and a bright yellow beam of light full of destructive power shot towards Bronski, who was rushing towards him. Under this beam of destructive light, Bronski, who had transformed, felt the ultimate threat between life and death. Bronski once thought that he would never feel this feeling on a second person except Johnny in his life, but unexpectedly, facing this extremely fast beam of destructive light, the palpitation reappeared. Boom! A terrible explosion sounded, and a huge smoke and dust rushed into the sky, wrapping Bronski's body in it. Feeling the strong destructive breath and the beam of destructive light, even Barton's eyes jumped. Would Bronski be in trouble? But soon, the smoke and dust dispersed, and Bronski's huge body, after transforming into abomination, appeared in everyone's sight. At this time, an energy barrier on the wrist of the huge Bronski slowly retracted, and he looked a little embarrassed. This energy barrier is the result of the Security Council's technology combined with Wakanda's technology. A small bracelet, after being charged, can build a shield-shaped pure energy barrier at a critical moment, which is the most effective against various energy attacks. Bronski smiled grimly and continued to rush towards the destroyer. However, this time, he had put away all his contempt and regarded the destroyer as a powerful opponent. When he rushed over, he relied on his super speed and constantly changed his position, making it difficult for the destroyer to catch his trajectory. Seeing this, Barton did not hesitate. The vibranium longbow in his hand was instantly unfolded, and an explosive arrow flew out of his hand and shot towards the destroyer. Boom! The explosive arrow, fused with vibranium technology, suddenly exploded when it hit the destroyer's armor. The flames and high temperatures formed by the powerful explosive energy wrapped the destroyer in it. The flames had not completely dissipated yet, and Bronski had seized the opportunity and quickly rushed to the destroyer. His sharp nails were accompanied by a touch of cold light. He was not afraid of the still burning flames at all, and he grabbed and tore off the destroyer wrapped in flames. A sharp metal friction sound came from the flames. The destroyer's body was thrown back under Bronski's attack. The flames burning on his body did not cause any effect on his armored body. Seeing this scene, Bronski and Barton's faces were a little solemn. The previous joint attack hit the destroyer, but failed to cause any substantial damage. What they didn't know was that they were surprised, and Loki was even more shocked and angry. Originally, he thought that after controlling the destroyer created by Odin, he could control the destroyer to crush the two of them when they met their enemies, in order to avenge the humiliation they had given him before. However, after several rounds of fighting, the destroyer not only failed to crush the two, but was at a disadvantage, which Loki could not accept in any way. In Loki's anger, the huge divine power in his body rose and roared, and he injected all of it into the Eternal Spear Gungnir. With the huge divine power injected, the Eternal Spear's control over the destroyer became much stronger. In the surprised eyes of Bronski and Patton, the destroyer, who was at a disadvantage, had a huge momentum rising up, more than twice as strong as before. "Bronski, be careful!" With Patton's urgent shout, the destroyer's face armor opened layer by layer, and the surging and fiery destructive energy gathered, and in a blink of an eye, it launched another attack. Chapter 174, Rescue of Hatred. Bronski also reacted quickly, dodging the explosion. His strong physical strength gave him terrible speed and reaction ability, and he was barely able to avoid the attack of the Pillar of Destruction. However, this time, the destroyer was under Loki's powerful control, unlocking most of his power. His strength was more than doubled compared to before. The Pillar of Destruction continued to chase Bronski. Facing this Pillar of Destruction that could shatter everything, Bronski felt the ultimate threat and did not dare to resist it. He could only use his speed advantage and dodge continuously. Barton seized the opportunity, pulled his longbow to the full, and arrows shot towards the destroyer like meteors. These arrows were not only extremely powerful, but also had different functions. There were explosive arrows for range attacks, armor-piercing arrows with strong single-point penetration, flame arrows that burn continuously, guide arrows that could automatically track, and gravity arrows that formed a gravity field. Arrows with various functions gathered and shot out at the destroyer. The thick flames accompanied the explosion, forming a circle of death around the destroyer's body. Gravity, magnetic field, high temperature, explosion. All attacks converged in it. If it were a creature in the conventional sense, it would probably be dead. However, under this series of attacks, the silver-white armor on the destroyer's body turned slightly red, and the violent energy around him became the source of his power. Not only could it not cause him any harm, but it also contributed to the power of the destroyer's beam of light. As the battle became more intense, Barton had completely become a shooter, constantly moving his position and attacking the destroyer, causing some minor interference. Bronski was under great pressure. He was the only meat shield in the whole field. His huge body made him the destroyer's first choice, and the beam of destruction was always chasing behind him. Damn it, I can't hold on for long, think of a way. A beam of destruction light was straggling around, and finally caught up with Bronski. Bronski had no choice but to turn on the energy shield on his wrist again. However, the energy stored in this energy shield was limited. Facing the powerful beam of destruction, the energy consumption of the shield was simply terrifying. If this continued, the shield would explode in a short moment at most. Although Bronski has thick skin and terrifying recovery ability, he still dared not try to use his body to hit the destroyer light pillar under the attack of the destroyer, who seemed to have taken Viagra. Otherwise, God knows what the result would be. Seeing that Bronski was suppressed by the destroyer and was in a very bad state, Barton also stepped up his attack. A large number of arrows almost did not stop and instantly overwhelmed the destroyer. Originally, Barton's overwhelming attack made it difficult to hurt the destroyer. Now the destroyer is controlled by Loki's great power and exerts enormous power. The destroyer, who was overwhelmed by the attack, almost ignored Barton's attack and focused on the huge Bronski, wanting to kill him. At the beginning, when Bronski and Barton came out to save the situation, the injured Sif and the trio saw that the two suppressed the destroyer, and there was joy in their eyes. But now, the situation has taken a sharp turn for the worse. In just a short moment, the destroyer ignored Barton's attack and chased Bronski, wanting to destroy Bronski's meat shield first. The energy barrier in front of Bronski was shaken rapidly under the continuous attack of the Pillar of Destruction. The blue energy was getting weaker and weaker. It was obvious that it could not hold out for much longer. Seeing this scene, everyone felt a sense of despair. Once Bronski's energy barrier was broken, they would not be able to escape today. In the divine domain, Loki, who was sensing everything, showed a sinister smile on his face. The divine power in his body roared and poured into the eternal spear Gungnir. Bronski's face was ferocious. The energy of the barrier was about to be exhausted. His body was constantly retreating because of the huge pressure. The concrete road under his feet was plowed out with 2 deep marks under the strong pressure. Finally, boom! The energy barrier was completely broken. The explosion formed by the Pillar of Destruction once again submerged Bronski. The smoke and flames that rose to the sky engulfed the area where Bronski was. Barton saw his companion being hit by the Pillar of Destruction. His eyes were bloodshot. With a roar, the arrows of the vibranium longbow were like meteors, pouring towards the destroyer one after another. Not far away, Coulson's face also changed drastically, his eyes full of worry and panic. However, even Bronski and Barton could not fight against the enemy, so he, an agent who had only completed the basic super soldier enhancement, could only die. It's over, the destroyer is too strong, we can't fight it at all. Sif and others were muttering, ready to sacrifice their lives. But soon, everyone became confused. In the area covered by smoke and flames, the sound of energy friction and explosion disappeared completely, and the destructive light column that shot into the smoke seemed to have entered another space without causing any fluctuations. What's going on? A trace of doubt appeared in the eyes of several people who found something strange. Could it be that the huge monster still has some means to resist? The laser beam of destruction disappeared in the smoke, and the smoke gradually dissipated. Everyone saw clearly that the huge Bronski had fallen to the ground, and in front of him, another figure appeared. blocking all the destructive light columns. "What is this?" The eyes of Sif and others became dull. This figure appeared out of thin air, and when he raised one hand, a circle of ripples in space was formed. When the pillar of destruction touched the ripples, it disappeared directly out of thin air without any explosion or fluctuation. Director. Seeing this figure, Coulson was the first to recognize it and shouted excitedly. Hearing Coulson's voice, Barton, who was madly attacking the destroyer, also stopped, with excitement and relief in his eyes. Johnny's appearance meant that everything was a foregone conclusion. At the critical moment, Johnny finally arrived and helped Bronski block the fatal attack. When the smoke and dust completely dispersed, everyone saw clearly that the figure that appeared in front of Bronski was a handsome and extraordinary young man with a calm face. The young man did not have a very strong momentum, but the fact that he easily resisted the pillar of destruction made everyone dare not underestimate him. It was Johnny who appeared in time at the critical moment to help Bronski block the pillar of destruction. After receiving the information from the Security Council, Johnny rushed over quickly. He happened to see Bronski unable to resist the destructive light column, so he rescued him. "Bronski, are you okay?" Chapter 175 Energy Black Hole. There was not much fluctuation in Johnny's voice, but when it reached Bronski's ears, he was very moved. "Master, I'm fine." In the explosion just now, Bronski had many wounds all over his body, but with his strong recovery ability, he almost healed them all in a dozen breaths, but he looked a little embarrassed. However, the attack just now put him in a life-and-death crisis. In his uneasy state, he changed his address to Johnny from Director to Master. Facing the continuous attack of the destroyer, Johnny raised his eyebrows slightly, and with a thought, a great force burst out. A space blade appeared out of thin air and shot towards the destroyer, crashing into the destroyer's armor. Amidst the loud bang, the destroyer suffered a terrible blow. The pillar of destruction was interrupted, and the huge body was thrown away rapidly, hitting the ground heavily, causing the solid concrete floor to explode. "Loki, my people, can you touch them at will?" Johnny looked at the destroyer falling to the ground and spoke calmly. When Johnny faced the destroyer and felt the fluctuation of divine power, a gleam of brilliance flashed in the depths of his eyes, but no one noticed it. Although nearly a century had passed, Johnny had not forgotten the lesson that the divine realm had taught him when he first came to this world. When he was in Sokka, Johnny had thought that when he had great power, he would one day take revenge on the divine realm. However, after experiencing so many things, Johnny's mentality had become too detached. If he still regarded the divine realm as a target, he would simply fail to live up to this terrible strength. However, if he provoked Johnny, Loki was destined to suffer a bad fate. The cutting force formed by a sharp space blade was extremely strong, but it only threw the destroyer's body away, and there was no obvious mark on the armor. Johnny also secretly sighed that this special weapon that Odin had poured his heart and soul into was indeed extraordinary. Although Johnny's words were spoken to the destroyer, he believed that Loki, who was controlling the destroyer, would definitely hear them clearly. "Who is this? Why is he so strong?" When the destroyer was hit hard and fell to the ground, Loki, who was far away in the god's realm, changed his face and felt an unprecedented threat. Johnny appeared and not only resolved the threat of the destroyer, but also knocked the destroyer to the ground with one blow, which surprised everyone. "You guys step back, leave it to me." Johnny knocked down the destroyer with ease, and there was no fluctuation on his face. He said to Barton and others. Although Barton and Bronski had completed the enhancement of intermediate super soldiers, they still seemed a little powerless when facing an opponent of the level of the destroyer. Hearing Johnny's order, the two nodded, retreated respectfully, and handed the battlefield to Johnny. After enduring a blow from the space blade, the destroyer climbed up again, and the destructive power on his body rioted, facing Johnny. At this time, Loki was already extremely angry, and almost all of his divine power was injected into the Eternal Spear, unlocking the power of the destroyer to the maximum extent he could control. Last time, Loki wanted to attack Thor and quietly came to Earth, but he was beaten by Abomination and Barton. Today, he had a chance to kill the two to vent his hatred, but just when he was about to succeed, Johnny suddenly appeared. not only saving Bronski, but also knocking down the destroyer with one blow. This was tantamount to another heavy slap in the face for Loki. In Loki's view, this was the ants in the atrium who once again challenged the majesty of the gods. At this time, Loki no longer wanted to consider why there were so many strong people among the weak humans in the atrium. His only idea was to burst out with all his strength and let the destroyer kill everyone present, so that he could calm his anger. Under Loki's desperate injection of divine power, the destruction fluctuations emitted by the destroyer became more intense. On the armor-like body, the fiery power of destruction lingered, making the silver armor faintly red and translucent. Under this huge will of destruction, everyone felt a strong pressure, which was an absolute crushing oppression of strength, almost suffocating. The huge pressure made everyone retreat. Sif and others took Thor, who was seriously injured, and retreated far away. Only Johnny, who was facing the destroyer, had a calm face from beginning to end, and seemed to be calm and indifferent, as if he could not feel the pressure brought by the destroyer at all. Destroy everything. Loki's forehead was bulging with veins, and the spear of eternity paused heavily. The voice was transmitted to the destroyer in a strange way. The armor on the face of the destroyer was removed layer by layer, revealing the rich destructive power inside. The energy rolled and roared, and finally exploded. A beam of destructive light that was several times stronger than before shone from the face of the destroyer, rushing towards Johnny with the will to crush everything. Under the control of Loki's divine power that reached the limit, the strength of the destroyer was finally revealed. This beam of destructive light made Johnny feel a little pressure, but that was all. Johnny's body was filled with unparalleled power. With the movement of his mind, it surged out like a raging sea. Let me show you what destruction is. Johnny waved his hand, and the unparalleled cosmic energy turned into a barrier in front of him. This powerful shield not only caused the surrounding space to shake violently, but also affected and twisted the air and light it touched. The naked eye could not see it clearly. All they could see was Johnny's position, which turned into a deep energy black hole. Under the horrified gaze of the crowd, Johnny's body seemed to turn into a terrible black hole. The pillar of destruction touched the thick black around Johnny's body, and it was like being swallowed up, shattered and dissipated. And now, this black hole that annihilates everything is moving towards the destroyer. Loki, who controls the destroyer, can't help but show horror in his eyes. He can't imagine that the destroyer, a divine weapon created by Odin with countless precious materials and magic secrets, would be completely suppressed when facing a human ant. Seeing Johnny's annihilating black hole approaching the destroyer, the only thing Loki could do was to continuously pour in his divine power, hoping that the destroyer's pillar of destruction could break the black hole Johnny had created. However, the reality was cruel. After building the annihilating black hole, Johnny slowly walked towards the destroyer step by step, and soon arrived in front of the destroyer. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.